Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. She was always direct unless she truly didn't understand something. She had no hesitation in speaking her mind. That's very obvious. Blaine agreed. Asdith released his face and continued, I have plenty of time today, so I'll stick around and watch you work. Show me around first. Alright. Blaine hadn't expected Asdith to stay. He had assumed she would just relay some information and leave like she had last time. But I still need to give this little guy a bath. Why don't you have a seat for a while? Blaine suggested. So, in your eyes, this little thing is more important than me? Asdith's gaze turned noticeably colder. No, it's just that I just got back from training the assassination unit outside, so I need to wash up as well. I figured I'd bathe it at the same time. Blaine explained casually, unfazed. He hadn't expected Asdith to be bothered by something so trivial, but fortunately, he reacted quickly. Meanwhile, Chelsea, still in her kitten form, nearly bristled in alarm. She barely managed to suppress her reaction. Any unusual movement might make Asdith suspicious. A moment ago, it had been Blaine struggling to deal with Asdith. Now, it was Chelsea's turn. She had completely forgotten about the whole bath situation. Chapter 56, turns out it's a little she-cat? Forget it. Go take your bath. I'll look around on my own. Asdith said before casually stepping into the nearest room. It happened to be the assassination unit's break room. Inside were Akam, Kurum, and the others. Despite seeing so many people inside, Asdith showed no surprise. You're the members of the assassination unit, correct? Yes, General Asdith. Kurum responded respectfully. The others also showed expressions of reverence. Though this was their first time meeting Asdith in person, they had seen her portrait before, so they recognized her immediately. General Asdith, where is Commander Blaine? Kurum asked. He took a cat to bathe. Asdith replied. Oh, I see. Kurum relaxed a little. She had been worried that General Asdith had come to trouble Commander Blaine over the incident from last time. After all, the mysterious disappearance of those staff members would eventually come to light. What's on your mind? Are you worried that I'd do something to Blaine? Asdith's sharp eyes immediately caught the brief flicker of relief on Kurum's face, making her curious. However, she wasn't thinking about the missing staff members. Not only was she completely unaware of that matter, but even if she knew, she wouldn't have cared in the slightest. No, not at all. Kurum quickly regained her composure and shook her head as if nothing had happened. Is that so? Asdith smirked, her presence completely overwhelming Kurum. As a general of the Empire, Asdith already had absolute authority over her. Having been conditioned by the Imperial Assassination Unit for so long, there was no way Kurum could openly defy a superior. General Asdith, is there a reason for your visit today? Sarah asked, standing at attention out of habit. Nothing major. I came to see Blaine and check on his work. Asdith replied casually. It really seems like General Asdith and Master are close. You always make time to visit him. Sarah said, her voice full of innocent admiration. That's right. Asdith admitted without hesitation. He even saved my life once. You could say I still owe him a favor. Hearing how close Commander Blaine and General Asdith were, Kurum became more interested. And judging from Sarah's words, Asdith made time to visit Blaine despite her busy schedule. That wasn't just a good relationship, it was a close one. If there were urgent matters, that would be understandable. But if Asdith was coming just to see Blaine, then that was suspicious. Eh? Master actually saved General Asdith before? Sarah was visibly surprised. The rest of the assassination unit members were also caught off guard. It seemed Commander Blaine was even more extraordinary than they had imagined. After all, General Asdith was known as the strongest in the Empire. Kurum, however, remained indifferent. She had already witnessed Blaine effortlessly slay a superclass danger beast with her own eyes. Even though the beast had been hibernating and not in peak condition, the fact that Blaine had defeated it so easily spoke volumes about his strength. If she had been the one facing it, she wouldn't have had such an easy time. Asdith didn't bother explaining and didn't care how they interpreted it. Back then, she hadn't yet acquired her Tegu, Demon's Extract. If she had, no mere superclass danger beast would have been a threat to her. But she never made excuses for her losses. The truth was, Blaine had saved her, and there was no denying it. So, soon enough, I'll make him my deputy general. That should settle the favor. Asdith spoke as if it were a simple matter. Of course, she never intended for Blaine to stop at deputy general. Her real plan was to push him into the position of general. This was the ultimate goal of Asdith's Blaine development plan. In her eyes, promoting Blaine directly to deputy general was already a generous reward. And from a normal perspective, it certainly was. Who else could rise so many ranks in such a short time? Even Asdith, the Empire's strongest, had climbed her way up through years of effort. When she first arrived in the imperial capital, she had participated in numerous tournaments, winning every single one before she was finally accepted into the military. But Blaine had his own ambitions, and becoming Asdith's second-in-command didn't align with his plans. I see. General Asdith is so kind. Sarah beamed, genuinely happy for her master's bright future. To her, this was nothing but good news. However, Kurum and Kelly had different reactions. If Blaine became Asdith's deputy general, wouldn't that mean he would no longer be in charge of the Imperial Assassination Unit? Kurum's expression wavered. She hesitated for a moment before asking, so Commander Blaine won't be our superior anymore? Of course. But if you miss him, you can always visit him at my place. Asdith said casually. She was completely unaware of the strict regulations governing the Imperial Assassination Unit, otherwise, she wouldn't have made such a suggestion. All right. Kurum muttered, looking slightly downcast. She had hoped Blaine would remain their commander, but in just a matter of days, he was already being reassigned. And the next leader? No, it was almost certain that whoever took over wouldn't be any different from the previous ones. Not everyone had Blaine's guts to outright defy orders from high-ranking officials. But in front of General Asdith, Kurum couldn't voice any complaints. Meanwhile, on the other side, Blaine had already taken the small black cat to the bathhouse. He planned to bathe the kitten first and worry about himself later. As for what he had said to Asdith earlier, it had just been an excuse. Knowing full well that this black cat was actually someone transformed, there was no way he was going to bathe alongside them. As he prepared the warm water and was about to place the kitten in the basin, a thought struck him: he should probably confirm whether it was a male or female cat first. So, he lifted the black kitten up for a closer look. At that moment, Chelsea felt utterly hopeless. She kept reminding herself these sacrifices were necessary, they were worth it for the mission. Because of that, the black kitten in Blaine's hands showed no signs of embarrassment. A female. Blaine was taken aback. Didn't that mean this black kitten was likely a woman in disguise? Chapter 57, a rare and precious kindness. Of course, there was still the possibility that a man had turned into a female cat. For a Tegu, such a transformation wouldn't be difficult. Blaine thought to himself that it would be best to just assume this cat was male, or better yet, not think about it at all. Still, while bathing the black kitten, he instinctively avoided certain sensitive areas. Meanwhile, Chelsea did her best to suppress her embarrassment, letting Blaine handle her body without resistance. To her surprise, his touch was gentle yet efficient. It was still humiliating, but at least it wasn't unbearable. Huh? What caught Chelsea's attention was how he seemed to be deliberately avoiding certain areas, either brushing over them quickly or skipping them entirely. Could it be he had figured it out? She quickly dismissed the thought. That was impossible. As long as she didn't slip up, her Tegu, Gia foundation, had never failed before. Besides, there wasn't even the slightest trace of suspicion on his face. As Chelsea mulled over this, Blaine had already finished washing her. He lifted her out of the basin, emptied the dirty water, and refilled it with fresh warm water before placing her back in. Gently scratching the black cat's chin, he said in a soft voice, "All right, you can wash yourself now." Hearing this, Chelsea suddenly felt that this guy was unexpectedly kind. In an empire as dark as this one, especially in the imperial capital, it was rare to find someone like him. If he were just an ordinary citizen, it wouldn't be surprising. But Blaine was someone who held a managerial role in the Imperial Assassination Unit and had even earned the favor of General Asdith. He was undeniably a powerful individual. In the current state of the Empire, nearly everyone with power was tainted by corruption and crime, including the Revolutionary Army. Killing was killing, no matter the justification. No side was innocent. And yet, in this ruthless world, he was still gentle enough to care for a stray cat. To Chelsea, that was a rare thing indeed. Perhaps that was why the Revolutionary Army had ordered her to monitor him instead of assassinating him. Even so, she couldn't judge Blaine too quickly. She needed to observe him for a while longer. She now felt certain he hadn't suspected anything earlier. This was probably just his natural kindness. With that in mind, Chelsea focused on playing her role properly, acting just as a pet cat should. Once the black kitten was clean, Blaine used a towel to dry it off. He then placed the kitten in the room outside the bathroom, shutting the door behind him as he prepared to take his own bath. He wasn't worried about it running off if he heard the door open. He'd immediately notice and wouldn't give it the chance to cause trouble. Of course, Chelsea wouldn't reveal her identity at a time like this. She still needed to stay undercover and observe Blaine carefully. If nothing unexpected happened, she planned to remain in her kitten form until her mission was complete. For now, Chelsea curled up on Blaine's bed to rest, taking the opportunity to examine his room. It was simple, neat, and sparsely furnished, far from the messy, rough image she had imagined. Back when she worked under a certain governor, that man had been a complete slob, reeking of alcohol every day. That governor had been cruel and tyrannical, and when Chelsea stumbled upon the Tigugia Foundation in his treasure vault, she took the opportunity to assassinate him before joining the Revolutionary Army. 10 minutes later, Blaine emerged from the bathroom. He had changed into the standard attire of the Imperial Assassination Unit in all black, form-fitting outfit designed for combat and stealth. Meow. Seeing him return, the black kitten immediately got up, jumped off the bed, and slowly padded over to him almost as if it had already accepted him as its master. Blaine sighed internally. This guy was really committed to the act. If not for his Mangekyō Sharingan detecting the faint anomaly in that wound earlier, no normal person would ever suspect that this little black cat was actually human. Picking up the kitten, he made his way back to the rest area, where Asdith was still waiting. "You're back. Looks like you're done washing up," Asdith noted, seeing him in fresh clothes. "Yeah. I cleaned it up too," Blaine replied, setting the now spotless black kitten on the floor. "I still don't quite understand why you care so much about such a small thing," Asdith remarked indifferently. Though she saw it as a rare, cute side of Blaine, understanding it was another matter entirely. "This kind of thing doesn't really need a reason. There's nothing complicated about it," Blaine said with a hint of helplessness. He didn't even know how to explain it to Asdith. "Master, shouldn't you give it a name? Like you did with Koro?" Sarah suddenly asked. "Good point. Might as well name it." Blaine nodded slightly. Since the person-turned-kitten was so dedicated to the act, he figured he might as well play along. "I'll just call it Shady." Blaine wasn't great at naming things, and since it was a black kitten, the name Shady seemed fitting enough. "That's a pretty straightforward name, but it does sound nice," Sarah commented. Sarah was being polite, but Asdith was more direct. "Blaine, it seems naming isn't exactly your strong suit." Meanwhile, Chelsea was secretly amused. Though this wasn't important information, it was still somewhat entertaining. "I guess it is a bit lacking," Blaine admitted. "Well then, can you show me around now?" Asdith asked. "Of course. Happy to oblige," Blaine responded with a nod. He had some things he wanted to ask Asdith as well. Seeing Blaine pick up the kitten again, Asdith raised an eyebrow. "You're bringing it with you? Just how much do you like these little things?" "No, it's still injured and hasn't fully recovered. I need to keep an eye on it," Blaine explained naturally. In truth, he had just come up with the excuse on the spot. But there was some truth to it. He really couldn't afford to let this little one out of his sight. Clearly, Blaine had no intention of letting Asdith find out the kitten's real identity. "Oh? You're more considerate than I expected. I didn't realize you cared so much about me." Hearing Blaine's words, Chelsea was slightly surprised. Chapter 58, The Conscience Faction. With a little black cat in his arms, Blaine led Asdith on a tour of the Imperial Assassination Unit space. "You really are amazing, Master. Even walking alongside General Asdith, you remain completely at ease." Sarah watched them leave together, smiling with admiration. However, the other assassination unit members, including Kurum, weren't as cheerful. After all, Commander Blaine would soon be leaving them. They had finally found a superior worth following, only to lose him so soon. Kurum's feelings were the most complicated of all. It seemed that Blaine had become more than just an important figure in her eyes. "Oh, right. There's something I wanted to ask you," Blaine said as he walked alongside Asdith. Since she was free today, it was a good opportunity to probe her about the inner workings of the Empire. "What is it?" Asdith asked casually, as if telling him to ask whatever he wanted. "I'm a bit curious. Aside from Prime Minister Honest's faction, are there any other factions in the palace?" Blaine got straight to the point. He still wasn't sure if Honest's faction completely dominated the palace or if there were other forces opposing them. Judging by how corrupt the imperial capital had become, it was obvious that Honest's influence was overwhelming. "If you want to put it that way, there's also a so-called conscience faction. That's what the rebels call them," Asdith answered indifferently. "They're under the protection of Great General Do, including the former Prime Minister. If not for that, Honest would have wiped them out long ago. But don't worry, that old hardliner Do strictly follows the ancestral edicts and won't interfere in politics. He only uses his authority to shield those officials. Of course, There's no guarantee he won't step in if he reaches his limit. But when that time comes, I'll deal with him. I've been wanting to fight him anyway. After hearing Asdith's explanation, Blaine had a better grasp of the situation. Naturally, he had heard of Great General Mundo. He was the supreme commander of the Imperial Army, a descendant of a long line of generals who had served the Empire for generations. He was one of the few individuals in the Empire who could be called the strongest. Standing alongside Asdith, while Mundo protected certain conscientious officials, they were powerless against Honest and remained on the defensive. Still, at least Honest's faction didn't have complete control over the entire empire. So, I take it you're on the Prime Minister's side, then? Blaine remarked. You could say that. Asdith replied with a slight nod. That guy serves my interests so long as he lets me indulge in battle, that's all that matters to me. The Empire is facing both internal and external crises, isn't it? Besides the rebels, there are also hostile tribes from the north, west, and south eyeing its territory. Blaine continued, wanting to clarify the overall situation. Yes. And every now and then, pirates run wild along the southern coasts. Asdith added. But I'll personally deal with those tribes. As for Mundo, that old relic may be at odds with us, but he's reliable enough to keep the imperial capital under control. I see. That's all I needed to know. Blaine had gotten the answers he was looking for. At the very least, there were still officials in the palace with a conscience. Not everyone was rotten to the core. As for this conversation, he didn't mind if the little black cat overheard it. The Revolutionary Army probably already knew all of this anyway. Blaine finished showing Asdith around the base. There wasn't much to see since the base itself wasn't very large. For the most part, they had just been chatting as they walked. Once their conversation wrapped up, Asdith was ready to leave. Well then, I'll be going. Once I've pacified the northern tribes, I'll come find you again. Don't forget what I said today. Asdith remarked. I can tell your assassination unit members don't want to part with you. Make sure to say a proper goodbye when the time comes. Blaine didn't say much. With that, Asdith left. Back in the lounge, Blaine immediately noticed something off about everyone's expressions except for Suru's. Commander, has General Asdith already left? Kelly asked cautiously. Yes, she's gone. Why? Blaine asked, a bit puzzled. Could it be, as Asdith had mentioned, that everyone felt reluctant now that they had heard he would be transferring to her command? I heard you're going to be assigned to General Asdith's unit soon. Is that true? Kurum asked as soon as she confirmed Asdith was gone. It's probably true, but nothing has been completely finalized yet. Blaine answered vaguely. He still hadn't fully taken control of the Imperial Assassination Unit, so he wasn't about to reveal his plans prematurely. But realistically, Commander, transferring to General Asdith's side would be a better opportunity. Our unit doesn't hold much influence in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, and General Asdith is doing what's best for you. We shouldn't be selfish. I wonder if Commander Sarah will transfer with Commander Blaine. It would still be nice if she stayed behind. Although everyone was reluctant about Blaine leaving, they understood the reasoning behind it. Besides, they had no right to interfere in their commander's affairs. If anything, it was only because Blaine had been lenient with them that they even dared to voice their opinions. Now under past leadership, they wouldn't have spoken out at all. Kurum remained silent for a moment. He said it wasn't finalized yet, but she felt that Blaine wouldn't refuse such an offer. Staying here would only make him a bigger target for retaliation from higher-ups. She knew she shouldn't be so selfish. But in the next moment, she acted on impulse. No. I still want to be selfish. Kurum suddenly grabbed Blaine's hand and pulled him out of the room. She even led him directly to her quarters, ensuring no one else could overhear their conversation. Meanwhile, Chelsea, still in her black cat form, was dangling in Blaine's other hand. Commander. Why are you leaving so soon? Didn't you say you'd always look after us? With the door now locked behind her, Kurum looked at Blaine with a troubled expression. Or, before General Asdith pacifies the northern tribes, why don't we take out night trade? If we gain enough recognition from the Empire, maybe we could join General Asdith's forces together. Chelsea found this rather interesting. It seemed like a good show was about to unfold. She had a feeling this little sister might have certain feelings for Blaine. Chapter 59, It's All For You. Blaine let out a small sigh. Why are you all overthinking this? I already told you it's not set in stone yet. I need time to consider my options. Kurum froze for a moment. Commander Blaine was seriously thinking this over? Did something like this even require consideration? Becoming General Asdith's deputy was an opportunity countless people could only dream of. Not only would it remove the burden of dealing with the high-ranking officials of the Imperial Assassination Unit, but Asdith also didn't seem nearly as strict with Blaine. In fact, their relationship even seemed somewhat ambiguous. From Blaine's perspective, This had to be nothing but good news, right? So Kurum had only voiced a small complaint. She had never actually said she didn't want him to go. Her real plan was to eliminate Night Raid before he left, securing a major victory for the assassination unit. That way, they might have enough merit to negotiate with the Empire for their future. It was a slim chance, but it was worth trying. So she couldn't help but ask, isn't this a great opportunity? Why do you still need to think about it, Commander? It's for your sake. Blaine replied. You think I can just walk away that easily? If I do leave for Asdith's side, what happens to you all? I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving everything in Sarah's hands. In a way, he wasn't wrong. Restructuring the Imperial Assassination Unit into a new organization was already a vast improvement over what it used to be. And truthfully, he couldn't fully trust Sarah just yet. Her warped sense of justice still hadn't been corrected. The unit members had already been deeply brainwashed, and if they ended up following Sarah's lead without his influence... Commander. Kurum was visibly moved by his words. Meanwhile, Chelsea quietly took mental notes on Blaine's personality. A certain level of kindness, gentleness, and loyalty, those were the traits she temporarily attributed to him. She was beginning to understand why the assassination unit members were so reluctant to let him go. They had been trained under inhumane methods by the Empire, yet Blaine actually seemed to care about them. But what she found even more curious was, wasn't he worried about his own position? Going against the Empire's usual training methods was bound to cause trouble for him. Even danger. I understand now. I was wrong to assume, Commander. Kurum said, finally calming down. But this is General Asdith's order. If you go against it, there will be consequences, right? For the first time, she was genuinely worried for him. Probably. Blaine admitted. I'll deal with it when the time comes. In that case, we should still deal with Night Raid as soon as possible. Kurum insisted. She had already made up her mind. In the end, she believed Blaine wouldn't disobey Asdith's orders. Instead of dragging him down, they should be doing their part. There's no need to rush into a fight with Night Raid. Blaine said calmly. You don't have to be so focused on earning merit. He added, just train when you need to train, rest when you need to rest, that's all. If the assassination unit engaged Night Raid now, the best outcome would be mutual destruction. The worst? A complete wipeout of the assassination unit. And that outcome was far more likely. Neither scenario was something Blaine wanted. But Kurum was about to protest when Blaine cut her off. This time, just listen to me. You always follow your commander's orders, don't you? Yes, Commander. I was being out of line. Kurum admitted. She realized she had pushed too far. Had this been their previous commander, she would have been punished for even speaking up. Anyway, don't worry too much, I'll figure something out. Blaine reassured her. All right. Kurum said with a faint smile, nodding slightly. She still wasn't entirely at ease, but she felt better than before. For now, this matter was settled. Kurum and the others had just returned from training today, so as usual, Blaine gave them some time off. This allowed the assassination unit members to walk around the streets of the imperial capital, giving them a chance to observe and better understand the city's current state. Without regular reinforcement, the effects of their brainwashing would gradually weaken. And by seeing the reality of the imperial capital firsthand, that process would only accelerate. Blaine's idea was undoubtedly effective. In the original story, Akame had begun questioning the Empire only after witnessing too much of its darkness. Eventually, her doubts led her to join the Revolutionary Army. As Blaine walked through the streets with the assassination unit, he stopped by a market stall to buy ingredients for making nutritious porridge. I wonder how that family is doing. Their child couldn't afford medical treatment, so I gave them some money. They should have gotten the medicine by now. Why don't we stop by and check on them later? Last time, I met a few young girls who had come from out of town. I gave them some money for lodging. I hope they've found work by now. Everyone recalled various encounters from their previous time off. They didn't react much to the sight of impoverished civilians scattered across the streets. They simply felt a bit of pity and offered small acts of help when they could. After all, they had been taught by the Empire that the people's suffering was caused by the rebels who had destabilized the nation. To them, seeing poverty only reinforced their belief in fighting against the so-called traitors. Listening to their conversations, Blaine thought to himself that their perception of the Empire was still far too naive. When he had served as the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, he had seen countless cases of outsiders being swindled, abused, or even tortured to death. Crime lurked in every corner of the city. Back then, he had been overwhelmed, constantly dealing with all sorts of incidents. During his tenure, the city's security had improved significantly. But after his resignation, he had no idea how the new captain was handling things. Most likely, they were no different from Ogre, the previous one. Blaine followed the assassination unit members to check on the family that had been struggling to afford their child's treatment. Chelsea, watching all of this unfold, found herself a bit surprised. The members of the assassination unit actually seemed to care about the less fortunate. Was it because they weren't inherently bad people? Or had Blaine somehow changed them? Chapter 60, Seeking Justice. The outskirts of the imperial capital. A rundown thatched hut. This was where the impoverished family lived. Compared to the bustling streets of the imperial capital, the hut looked pitifully shabby. And families like this, too poor to even afford medicine, were far from uncommon in the capital. Including Blaine and Sung, the entire imperial assassination unit had around 20 members. The tiny hut couldn't possibly fit them all. It looks like those kind young people from last time. An old woman, frail and thin to the point of being skin and bones, sat at the entrance. The stool beneath her creaked as if it might collapse at any moment. Grandma, wasn't your grandson sick last time? How is he now? He should be recovering by now, right? Kelly asked with optimism in his voice. However, the old woman's expression immediately darkened. She hesitated for a moment before replying, I truly appreciate your kindness last time, but the medicine we bought with that money turned out to be fake. My husband went to demand justice and got beaten for it. Now, we have no choice but to hope little Shota can hold on. What? They actually sold you fake medicine? Kelly was shocked. A pharmacy openly selling fake medicine and beating someone for confronting them. This was happening right in the imperial capital? Wasn't anyone regulating this? The rest of the team also found it hard to believe. This isn't surprising at all. The capital is far worse than you imagine. Blaine said calmly. I used to work for the Imperial Capital Security Force, so I know this better than you. Hearing this, the group fell silent for a moment, then their thoughts quickly turned to the rebels. This must be the rebels doing, right? If it weren't for them, the Empire wouldn't be in such a mess. Exactly. That's why we have to fight them to restore order. We need to prove ourselves with real achievements. Hunting danger beasts every day won't earn us any recognition from the Empire. Hearing their words, the old woman looked confused. This has nothing to do with the rebels or the Revolutionary Army, does it? My husband said that the pharmacy only dares to act so brazenly because it has connections with a high-ranking official in the capital. Right then, a hunched old man slowly stepped out of the hut. His body was covered in visible wounds, crudely bandaged with makeshift materials. Fortunately, his injuries weren't too severe, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get out of bed. You must all be young men who recently came from outside to enlist, right? The old man coughed, clasping his hands behind his back. The current state of the imperial capital has nothing to do with the Revolutionary Army. Back when the previous prime minister was in power, things were much better than they are now. Cough, cough. He took a breath and added, to be honest, I only wish the Revolutionary Army would overthrow those high and mighty officials who don't care if the common people live or die. That way, at least we'd have a chance to survive. You have no idea how many people have starved to death this year. This. Kelly and the others were left speechless. Their expressions grew tense. The firm belief they held that the rebels were the root of all evil began to waver, if only slightly. Blaine, who had been silent this whole time, remained that way. He knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to change their minds. They needed to see the truth for themselves, to witness firsthand what was really happening. Only then could the effects of their brainwashing begin to wear off. Where is the pharmacy? We'll help you get justice. Kurum spoke up, cutting straight to the point. She wasn't just looking to settle the matter, she also wanted to get to the bottom of what had really happened. Maybe just forget about it? The old woman looked worried. This won't do you any good. It might even put you in danger. It's fine, just tell us. I was the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, and I can't just ignore something like this. Blaine spoke firmly. That's right. Leave it to us. So, former vice captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, reporting for duty. Saru declared, holding Koro in her arms, her face radiating righteous enthusiasm. The former captain? Wait. Are you Captain Blaine? The old man suddenly reacted, his eyes widening in realization. Though he had never met Blaine in person, the captain's reputation had long since spread throughout the imperial capital. Everyone knew of the upright and just Captain Blaine. Unfortunately, his tenure had been brief. He had come suddenly and left just as quickly. Without him, the security force had quickly returned to its former corrupt state. Now, not only had Captain Blaine reappeared before him, but Vice Captain Sarah as well. And they were offering to help. The old man found it hard to believe. That's me. Blaine confirmed with a nod. I see. I really can't just swallow this injustice. I'll take you there right now. A fire lit in the old man's eyes, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Hearing that this was Captain Blaine, even the old woman stopped trying to dissuade them. Because if they didn't get the medicine soon, Their grandson likely wouldn't make it through the day. They arrived at the pharmacy. Why the hell are there so many people all of a sudden? Wait. Isn't that the old man from last time? Looks like he brought some back up to cause trouble. He sure has some guts. A wrinkled old fool like him still has the nerve to stir up trouble? This time, let's just cut off his arms and legs so he won't be a problem anymore. Hold up. Those people look at their clothes. Something's off. And that young guy in front. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. What's there to be afraid of? That man is upstairs right now, discussing business with the boss. With him around, it doesn't matter who these people are. The pharmacy workers immediately became wary of Blaine and his group. However, it was clear that none of them had recognized him yet. I heard you sold fake medicine and injured this old man. Return the money and don't even think about skipping the compensation. Kelly got straight to the point. Huh? You little bastard, you trying to joke with me? One of the workers sneered and burst into laughter. Within moments, burly men emerged from all directions, surrounding Blaine's group. Clearly, these were the pharmacy's personal enforcers. Their practiced movements made it obvious that this wasn't the first time they'd resorted to intimidation and violence. Selling fake medicine, strong-arming the weak, it was just business as usual. So, meanwhile, was struggling to contain herself. The desire to execute justice burned in her eyes, her expression twisting with anticipation. These thugs had come at the perfect time. Kneel and beg all you want, it won't save you. Beat them to death. The worker bellowed. But just then, the so-called big shot came down from the second floor. Seeing the commotion, he frowned. What's going on? What's with all this noise? Lord Cole, just some fools who don't know their place. We'll handle them right away. The worker's arrogance instantly turned into bootlicking the moment he addressed Lord Cole. However, the moment Cole got a clear look at Blaine and Sarah's faces, his expression froze. His glasses nearly slipped off his nose from sheer shock. Then, in a flash, he turned and slapped the worker across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the pharmacy. You absolute moron, do you even know what the hell you're saying? Chapter 61, Resolute Compensation. The clerk clutched his numb, aching face, staring at Lord Cole in utter disbelief. He hadn't said anything wrong, had he? Why was Lord Cole so furious? No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out what he had done to provoke such wrath. Did I do something wrong? He stammered, his face filled with shock and confusion. The other clerks and the personal guards were just as stunned, frozen in place, too afraid to move. Open your damn eyes and look properly. Those two over there are the former Captain Blaine and Vice Captain Sarang of the Imperial Capital Security Force. This group of fools had made Cole so furious he looked like he was about to explode. His rage alone was terrifying to witness. Although Blaine and Sarah's ranks both past and present weren't necessarily higher than his, the people backing Blaine were an entirely different matter. Rumors had already spread through the royal palace that General Asdith had personally recommended Blaine to Prime Minister Honest. The likelihood of this being true was high, and while no one knew exactly how much Asdith valued Blaine, one thing was certain: Cole had no intention of testing his luck by making an enemy out of him. Blaine and Sarah had a reputation for handling dirty work with ruthless efficiency. Whenever they were assigned to clean up a mess, they made sure it was dealt with no matter the cost. Several officials of similar status to Cole had already been caught up in their actions. Those with strong enough connections barely managed to escape, while the rest either ended up arrested or outright executed. Blaine had made countless enemies during that time, yet even now, no one dared to lay a hand on him. That alone was proof that he was not someone to be trifled with. The real reason for this was simple: Prime Minister Honest didn't care about the lives of his subordinates, whether they were civilians or low-ranking officials who had pledged loyalty to him. Even in the original tale, when his own son was killed, he remained indifferent. With Asdith's backing, there was no chance he would ever act against Blaine. Vice Captain Zero. Captain Blaine? The realization finally hit the clerk like a bolt of lightning. No wonder that man had seemed so familiar. His face turned deathly pale as panic set in. He was doomed. He didn't entirely understand why Lord Cole feared a former captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force so much, but at this point, understanding didn't matter. Lord Cole's wrath was already in full force. It was too late for regret now. All he could do was pray that Lord Cole wouldn't have him executed on the spot. Cole, meanwhile, had no patience left to deal with this fool. Forcing a smile, he immediately bowed his head and spoke in an apologetic tone. Captain Blaine, Vice Captain Sir, I sincerely apologize. These blind idiots have offended you. I'll make sure they are properly punished later. The old man hiding behind Blaine was utterly shocked. He knew Blaine had once been the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, but he never imagined that even someone like Lord Cole would have to bow and scrape before him. As the commotion grew, more and more onlookers gathered, eager to see what was happening. It's Captain Blaine. No wonder Lord Cole is so afraid of him. So that's Captain Blaine. Before, no one dared to report anything to the Imperial Capital Security Force because of Cole's influence. But today, these scumbags are finally getting what they deserve. I wonder who brought Captain Blaine here. Was it that old man? I remember he came to seek justice a few days ago and got beaten up. I never thought he'd actually know Captain Blaine. By the way, I heard a rumor. Captain Blaine is General Asdith's kept man. I don't know if it's true or not. Really? I heard people call him her lover instead. But either way, it explains why Cole is so terrified of him. The crowd kept their distance, whispering among themselves without fear of being overheard. In the end, Cole's quick decision to apologize was the smartest move he could have made. Otherwise, with the members of the assassination unit present, any one of them could have wiped out the thugs surrounding them, let alone Cole and the shop assistants, who had no real strength to speak of. There's no need for pointless chatter. I just want this matter resolved, Blaine said coldly. Hearing this, Cole froze for a moment, unsure what Blaine was referring to. But he had a pretty good guess. This pharmacy had been involved in shady dealings for a long time. The only reason he protected them was because they shared their profits with him. Cole shot a sharp glare at the clerk beside him, signaling him to explain the situation properly. The clerk quickly leaned in and whispered nervously, "We sold that old man over there some fake medicine. When he realized it and came to confront us, we beat him up. We figured he was just some helpless old geezer we could push around. We never imagined he'd be able to call in Captain Blaine." Cole's eyes darkened as he shot the clerk another furious glare. He didn't care whether this mess had been intentional or not, all he knew was that these fools had just caused him a massive headache. Once this was over, he was going to make sure every single one of them paid for it. The clerk, now panicked, stammered, "Anyway, they're here to demand compensation. If we return the money for the fake medicine in full and offer some extra compensation, that should be enough to settle things." Cole's expression eased slightly. Turning to Blaine, he quickly said, "Absolutely. We will return the full amount and ensure proper compensation for the harm done." Blaine gave a small nod. Under Cole's orders, the pharmacy manager returned every coin they had taken from the old man, along with a substantial compensation sum. Not only that, but they also provided him with the real medicine he needed, free of charge, and personally apologized to him. It was humiliating, but it was still far better than losing their lives. The old man chose to accept it. He neither wanted nor dared to push things further. If he completely fell out with the pharmacy, his family might suffer retaliation later on. And with that, the matter seemed to be settled. So, however, was visibly disappointed. She had been hoping for the chance to personally execute these evil people. "Koro, I bet you really wanted to eat them, huh? But no, you can't act without Master's permission," she said sweetly, as if she were comforting a child. Hearing such terrifying words spoken in such a gentle tone, the pharmacy staff and bystanders shuddered, feeling a deep sense of fear. Of course, Blaine had no intention of letting these people off so easily. All he had to do was apply some pressure on the Imperial Capital Security Force, and they would take care of the rest. And it wasn't just Blaine. Kurum and the others weren't about to let this go either. They hadn't come here just to help the old man seek justice. They wanted to uncover the true root of this issue. Was it a result of the rebels' uprising? Or was it yet another internal failure of the Empire itself? Chapter 62, Chelsea, an interesting fellow. "So, you've done this kind of thing plenty of times, haven't you?" Kurum stared at Cole with cold, disdainful eyes, as if looking at filth. "And you were the one who allowed it to happen?" Her words echoed the thoughts of Kelly and the others. If Cole was the root of the problem, then this had nothing to do with the rebels at all. "Little girl, I have no idea what you're talking about," Cole said with a forced smile. There was no way he could admit to it outright. Everyone knew the truth, but if he said it himself, it would change everything. "Still playing dumb?" Kurum drew her sword, Yatsufusa, and pressed it against Cole's neck. The message was clear: one more useless word, and his throat would be slit on the spot. Cole's body stiffened with fear, a violent shudder running through him. He hadn't expected her to actually go through with it. Looking into Kurum's merciless, murder-filled gaze, he realized she would kill him without hesitation. Blaine, standing nearby, showed no reaction, as if silently allowing Kurum to handle Cole however she pleased. With his life hanging by a thread, Cole had no choice but to give in. "Why, yes. I was the one who allowed it. I've told you everything." Facing death, his pride meant nothing. If he had that kind of backbone, he wouldn't have fallen this low in the first place. Even after confessing, fear still gripped him. What if she killed him anyway? But in the next moment, Kurum smoothly sheathed Yatsufusa. She had gotten the answer she wanted, or rather, she had only needed an answer. There was no reason to create unnecessary trouble for Commander Blaine. As a member of the Empire's assassination unit, killing an official would inevitably drag Blaine into the mess. By now, the rest of the assassination unit had also heard Cole's confession. So, this wasn't about the rebels after all. It was a problem within the Empire itself. After they left the pharmacy, the old man repeatedly thanked them before hurrying home with the money and medicine to treat his grandson. Blaine and the others followed him to confirm that the medicine was real before finally leaving with peace of mind. However, after the incident, the mood among the members of the Empire's assassination unit was noticeably off. Blaine could guess the reason they were struggling to process what had just happened with Cole. Commander Blaine was right. The Imperial capital isn't as great as we thought. But it's not entirely hopeless. If we can rein in corrupt officials, things could still improve. That's true. Too bad that's not our job. All we can do is fight the rebels and try to create some form of stability for the people. As they left the thatched cottage, the group started discussing their thoughts. Although their core beliefs hadn't completely changed, they had begun to waver a promising sign. You helped a few little girls last time, didn't you? You should check on them again. Blaine suggested, continuing to guide them. Yet, deep down, he couldn't shake an ominous feeling. In a place like the Imperial capital, women who came from outside, whether young girls or grown women, were at constant risk of falling into unspeakable horrors. Few ever made it out alive. Having worked in the capital, Blaine was all too familiar with these kinds of tragedies. Now that you mention it, I suddenly feel uneasy too. Kurum murmured with a slight nod. After what had just happened, their illusions about the capital had been shattered. Meanwhile, Chelsea remained lazily nestled in Blaine's arms, watching the others with interest. To her, the members of the Empire's assassination unit were hopelessly brainwashed, a perfect product of the Empire's deranged ruling class. But she had noticed something else was Blaine trying to change them. If he could truly influence the assassination unit, it would be a huge advantage for the Revolutionary Army. Chelsea found Blaine more and more intriguing. Among all the Empire's officials she had encountered, he was by far the most unusual. This mission was turning out to be far more interesting than expected. The next few days certainly wouldn't be boring. Following their memories, the assassination unit returned to the area where they had previously helped the 4 little girls. Though they didn't know exactly where the girls were now, they could ask around. Upon seeing Captain Blaine, the local shopkeepers were surprisingly eager to help. There are a lot of girls from other regions who fit that description. Do you have anything more specific? Ah, I remember you. I saw you helping those 4 girls last time. They checked into a nearby inn afterward. They've been coming here for meals pretty often these past few days, but today, they mentioned they found jobs as secretaries for a noble. That noble is seriously bad news. Word is, he specifically hires girls from outside the capital. And none of them are ever seen again. Think about it, does a job like secretary really suit little kids? Going from shop to shop, they quickly gathered enough information to feel uneasy. If what the shopkeeper said was true, then this noble was deeply suspicious. Wasting no time, they headed straight for his estate to investigate. The guards at the gate tried to stop them, but the moment Blaine revealed his former status as a captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, they were granted entry without resistance. Someone's here? TSK. Just when I was about to try something new. Inside the mansion, a noble brat named Jabby Guy clicked his tongue in irritation, halting what he was doing when he heard approaching footsteps. Expecting to see someone familiar, his expression quickly twisted into a scowl when he spotted several unfamiliar figures standing in the hall. Who the hell are you? He snapped. How dare you interrupt my fun? But the moment Kurum and the others saw the scene inside, their faces darkened in shock. Kurum's expression turned heavy, some of the girls averted their eyes in horror, while the men clenched their fists in anger. Because right there in the hall, stripped of their clothes and bound by the guards, were the 4 girls they had helped before. Near them, several black dogs strained against their leashes, their bodies trembling with excitement, not the kind that suggested they were about to bite. As for Jabby Guy, he stood before them wearing nothing but a pair of shorts, his entire appearance reeking of indecency. The assassination unit instantly understood what was about to happen. Blaine sighed internally. His bad feeling had been right after all. But at least they had arrived in time before the worst could happen. Kurum's expression turned ice cold as she drew Yotsufusa, her sharp gaze radiating pure murderous intent. Commander? She asked, her voice devoid of warmth. Can I kill him? Chapter 63, Nutritious Porridge. Hearing Kurum, a girl who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, threatened to kill him, the nobleman Jabby Guy was first confused, then enraged. Little girl, you've got some dangerous thoughts. He sneered. But I have to say, you're quite the beauty. Still half-dressed, Jabby Guy casually reached for a sword nearby. He assumed the people in front of him were just a bunch of self-righteous kids playing hero. They might look intimidating, dressed in full gear, but he was a Shin user, and he had plenty of guards on his side. Oh? Now that I'm getting a closer look, you little girls are quite a sight. Jabugai ran a hand over his chin, his gaze lewdly sweeping over Kurum, So, and the other women in the group. At that moment, he started entertaining some vile ideas of his own. Kurum's expression turned ice cold, filled with nothing but disgust. So, though not entirely understanding the depth of his intentions, found his gaze unsettling and unbearable. Master, I want to rip out his eyes and feed them to Koro. Saru declared. Kill them all. Blaine ordered flatly, granting Kurum and Saru full permission to act. Kurum didn't hesitate for a second. In the blink of an eye, she vanished from sight, reappearing in front of Jabugai and severing his right arm, the one holding the Shing, with a single, clean strike. A Shing user was nothing compared to a Tigu user, especially one as skilled as Kurum. Before Jabugai could even register what had happened, Saru followed up, swinging her massive sword with full force and smashing his face to a pulp. His eyes shot out of their sockets, rolling across the floor. Koro, like a real hunting beast, pounced and devoured them in an instant. The last thing Jabugai ever saw was Saru's twisted, monstrous grin, the most horrifying image of his life, and also the very last. The rest of the assassination unit moved as well, driven by their rage toward the noble's atrocities. The guards stood no chance against them. Within minutes, every single one of them, including the aggressive black hounds, was slaughtered. The 4 girls who had been held captive sat frozen on the ground, their eyes blank, their minds shattered by fear. Blaine's gaze fell on their torn clothing. Without hesitation, he removed his outer coat and draped it over one of them. You all give them something to wear too, he instructed. Their clothes are beyond saving. The others immediately followed suit. With their bodies covered and realizing that these people had came to rescue them, the girls' expressions softened, a faint light returning to their eyes. Is that Saru? A blonde girl was the first to recognize her. Sarah had been the one who showed them kindness before, helping them when they first arrived. The other girls also recognized the familiar faces around her. Sarah nodded. Sorry we were late. Tears welled up in the blonde girl's eyes. You're not late at all. Thank you. Thank you so much. After some time, the 4 girls slowly regained their composure. The emotional scars would take longer to heal, but at least the worst had been prevented. We've made up our minds, we're going back to the countryside. At least we won't have to face horrors like this again. The imperial capital is nothing like what we imagined. There's no point in staying. I don't want to go through this ever again. I miss my parents. Now that their minds were clear, their decision was final. They had came to the capital hoping to make something of themselves, to bring prosperity to their home, or at the very least, send money back to their families. But after what they had just endured, all those dreams had been shattered. The imperial capital had nothing left to offer them. That's for the best, Blaine said, tossing them a pouch filled with coins. Use this to buy some new clothes, hire some guards to escort you, and take the rest home to your families. For him, it was just a small sum. For them, it was a fortune. They repeatedly bowed and thanked Blaine, Saru, and the others before carefully accepting the money and leaving. Their first stop was a nearby clothing store to buy proper clothes. Once dressed, they returned the borrowed coats before finally bidding Blaine's group farewell. With that, it was time for Blaine and the others to leave as well. Before they did, Blaine's gaze landed on the Shing lying on the ground. Take that with us, he instructed. We'll see if anyone in the group is compatible with it. If he was going to build his own organization, strengthening his members was essential. Both Tigus and Shingus were valuable assets worth collecting. After all, the Revolutionary Army had long been doing the same, seizing Tigus whenever possible, not just to strengthen themselves, but to weaken the Empire as well. Today's day off was supposed to be a time for rest and enjoyment. But after everything that had happened, the mood within the assassination unit was far from pleasant. And the more they experienced situations like this, the faster the effects of their brainwashing would fade. For Blaine, that was undoubtedly a good thing. Back at the assassination unit space, Blaine set about preparing some nutritious porridge for the little black cat. While he was in the kitchen, chopping ingredients and tending to the meal, the kitten remained in the bedroom. Chelsea, as usual, was sprawled lazily on Blaine's bed. From her spot, she could only catch glimpses of his silhouette through the kitchen window and hear the steady rhythm of his knife against the cutting board. She didn't think much of it, just assumed he was making dinner as usual. After all, in this world, the concept of nutritious porridge didn't really exist. Even if she had noticed the odd assortment of ingredients Blaine had bought earlier, she wouldn't have guessed what he was making. After some time, Blaine emerged from the kitchen, carrying a steaming bowl of porridge. He placed it on the table, then gently picked up the little black cat from the bed and set it down in front of the bowl. Chelsea stared at the porridge, momentarily confused. He actually made this just for me? The thought surprised her. And to her further astonishment, the aroma was rich and inviting. Clearly, he had put a lot of effort into it. She couldn't help but feel that Blaine's personality was completely at odds with the Imperial Assassination Unit. Then again, the kids in the assassination unit didn't seem inherently bad either. Curious, Chelsea gave the porridge a tentative lick. To her surprise, even from a human's perspective, it tasted delicious. Pleased, she rubbed her head against Blaine's palm, as if to show her approval. Chapter 64, Plans to create the Akatsuki organization. Blaine couldn't help but think that this little black cat had impressive acting skills. If it weren't originally human, it would be the perfect pet, beautiful, obedient, and quiet. A model house cat. Unfortunately, in the end, this little guy was still human. Before long, the little black cat finished the bowl of nutritious porridge. Blaine tidied up the dishes before heading off to have his own dinner. Late at night, when it was time to sleep, the little black cat was also in the bedroom. However, Chelsea clearly had no intention of sleeping on the floor. Just like the night before, she waited until Blaine was asleep before sneaking onto the bed and burrowing under the covers. In reality, Blaine wasn't fully asleep. The moment he heard the faintest sound, he knew the little black cat had crawled under the blankets again. Wanting to ensure a more peaceful sleep, he deliberately shifted, letting his hand rest directly on the little black cat. This way, if she made any unusual movements, he could react immediately. Chelsea tensed the moment a large hand covered her body, nearly jolting upright in alarm. But when she realized Blaine hadn't woken up or made any further movements, she relaxed. Still, being held down by his hand and sleeping in this position felt odd. For some reason, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. During their short 2-day break, the members of the Imperial Assassination Unit witnessed one shocking event after another in the Imperial capital. If it had only been 1 or 2 incidents, they might have been able to brush it off. But experiencing so much in such a short time and seeing it all with their own eyes left them shaken. Doubt crept into their hearts. Was the Empire truly as great as they had believed? Was absolute obedience to such an empire really the right thing to do? Even when it was time to resume training, these thoughts still weighed on their minds. "Commander Blaine, are we hunting danger beasts again today?" Kelly, trying to shift his focus, brought up the day's training. Blaine nodded. "Yes. Though we've been hunting danger beasts, the difficulty of each session will continue to increase." "Understood." Kelly and the others had no objections, but something felt off. The previous commanders had always incorporated assassination into their training, rarely focusing on combat against danger beasts. After all, their ultimate goal was to fight the rebels of Night Trade. Sharpening their skills through killing was considered the most effective way to prepare. Yet Commander Blaine had never included assassination in their training. That alone felt strange to them. Ding. The host has slain a level 4 danger beast. Reward, 1 system point, ding. The host has slain a level 3 danger beast. Reward, 3 system points, ding. The host has accumulated 200 system points, meeting a hidden condition. System shop level 1 has been upgraded to level 2. During training, a new system notification suddenly echoed in Blaine's mind. System shop? So it really could be upgraded? Blaine wasn't too surprised. From the beginning, he had noticed that system shop on his personal panel had a level 1 suffix, which suggested it could be leveled up. He had just never known how until now. Apparently, accumulating enough system points was the key. Eager to see what had changed, Blaine accessed the system shop with his mind. The first page still displayed the same items as level 1, apart from the 3 core attributes. However, scrolling further revealed the newly unlocked level 2 inventory. System shop level 2, note, the following items are system modified versions. Item, Red Cloud Robe, description, the signature attire of the Akatsuki organization. Offers better defense than standard clothing but has no significant practical effects, so it's relatively inexpensive. Price, 1 system point. Item, White Mask Set, description, includes the white mask and the Akaya fan. Prices increase progressively. The white mask is the base item, granting plus 10 to all attributes. The Akaya fan must be used in conjunction with it. Price, 10 system points. Base price, item, Ocular Power, description, directly enhances ocular abilities. Reaching a certain threshold can evolve the Mangekyō Sharingan into the Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan. Price, 1 system point. Item, Crimson Night Blade Set, description, includes the Tiger Skin Mask and the Crimson Night Blade, Taki. Prices increase progressively. The Tiger Skin Mask is the base item, granting plus 10 to all attributes. The Crimson Night Blade must be used in conjunction with it. Price, 10 system points. Base price, the newly unlocked level 2 items genuinely surprised Blaine. The first item, the Red Cloud Robe, immediately sparked inspiration. Since he was already planning to establish a new organization, Why not name it Akatsuki? The original Akatsuki had been founded to end the chaos in a mega cure and bring peace. In that case, his goal would be to put an end to the Empire's turmoil. As for ocular power, it hardly needed an explanation. If it truly allowed him to obtain the eternal Mangekyō Sharingan, the potential was immense, but the requirements were surely steep. And then there were the White Mask set and Crimson Night Blade set, both incredibly cost-effective. For just 10 system points, he could acquire a mask that boosted all attributes by plus 10. Not to mention, he was in dire need of a powerful, reliable weapon. Whether it was the Akame or the Crimson Night Blade, either one would be a perfect fit. After completing the training, Blaine began planning his next move. He intended to kill Tsukiyu, the founder of the Empire's assassination unit. Once Tsukiyu was dead, he would have full control over the unit. At the same time, Tsukiyu had already came to see Blaine as a serious threat. News of Blaine's actions within the Empire's assassination unit had gradually reached Tsukiyu, such as terminating brainwashing, granting leave, and abolishing the disciplinary action system. Blaine had defied Tsukiyu far too many times, overturning almost every rule he had established. Any high-ranking figure in Tsukiyu's position would find this intolerable. Although Blaine was unaware of Tsukiyu's growing hostility, he had long been mentally prepared for such a situation. It wouldn't interfere with his next steps. Meanwhile, after several days of observation, Chelsea felt she had gathered enough information about Blaine and was ready to report back on her surveillance. On the way back to the base after training, she seized a moment when no one was paying attention and quietly slipped away. Blaine could have chased after her, but he chose not to. He had already realized that this little black cat was only here to gather intelligence. If she had any intention of attacking, she would have done so by now. It was actually beneficial for the Revolutionary Army to recognize that the Empire's assassination unit was undergoing changes. That way, future encounters wouldn't have to immediately turn into deadly battles. At that moment, Blaine opened the system shop and exchanged his points for a white mask. Ding. The host has redeemed White Mask X1. Deducting system points X10. Chapter 65, Tsukiyu Imperial Capital, Royal Palace. A long, luxurious dining table was filled with an extravagant feast. As always, Prime Minister Honest indulged in binge eating, stuffing himself almost constantly. However, what was different today was the presence of someone sitting across from him. Though this person didn't partake in the meal, the fact that he could sit with Honest was proof of his high status. He was none other than Tsukiyu, the second most powerful official in the palace, ranking just below Honest. Unlike the gluttonous and rotund Honest, Tsukiyu had a tall and slender build. He wore small, round glasses, slicked back his greasy hair, and always carried a peculiar book in his hand. That book was, in fact, the Tigu, the complete book of the world, Rongo. It contained maps of nations across the world, with the Empire's territories documented in the greatest detail. The maps meticulously recorded information about minerals, vegetation, and geological features, while the book's final pages even predicted potential large-scale disasters in the future. It was, without a doubt, a divine artifact for governing a nation. Tsukiyu, something must be on your mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come looking for me so suddenly. At a glance, Honest knew that trouble was brewing again. You're right. To put it bluntly, it's about Blaine. You were the one who assigned him to the Empire's assassination unit, but he's been nothing but trouble for me. Tsukiyu's expression was grim as he recounted all of Blaine's so-called good deeds. Since Blaine was Honest's appointee and had ties to General Asdith, Tsukiyu had to consult Honest before making any moves against him. Honest nodded, slightly surprised. This guy really doesn't know how to stay in line. Back when Blaine was in the Imperial Capital Security Force, he had always acted recklessly, doing whatever he pleased. However, at the time, the people he offended were just insignificant figures in Honest's eyes, so he never paid much attention. But now that Tsukiyu was involved, things were entirely different. The reason was simple: Tsukiyu brought Honest immense benefits, much like Asdith did. Tsukiyu's intellect, along with his Tigu, the complete book of the world, Rongo, was invaluable to the Empire. After all, Honest himself barely managed the country, delegating most responsibilities to Tsukiyu. His mind was consumed only by pleasure and personal gain. The one thing he did most often was eliminate anyone in the court who dared to oppose him. Even a single slip of the tongue from an official could result in an immediate execution by Honest's decree. As a result, fewer and fewer conscientious officials dared to speak up. Those who remained silent could only survive under the protection of Great General Do's authority unless they abandoned their dignity and morals entirely, choosing to submit to the corrupt prime minister. For matters unrelated to his personal interests, Honest turned a blind eye, as long as corrupt officials ensured their bribes reached him. The Empire's descent into darkness could largely be attributed to Honest, the true source of its corruption. Although Skiyu operated from the shadows, he and Honest were cut from the same cloth. I remember that kid was recommended by General Asdith. How does she really feel about him? Skiyu asked with a sneer, crossing his arms. Does she care about his life or death? I don't think so. I know Asdith's personality, she never cares about anyone's survival. Anyone who dies is simply weak. Prime Minister Honest replied casually. He had long understood Asdith's deeply ingrained belief in the law of the jungle. He had never seen her mourn the loss of any subordinate. Besides, this wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. The three beasts were also talents she had taken an interest in, and among them, General Liver had previously offended him. Even though it was just a matter of not bribing him, Honest would go after anyone who displeased him. Now that the three beasts, including General Liver, had become Asdith's subordinates, she didn't seem to regard them with much importance, only as strong assets to be used. That's good. Just make sure that when the kid dies, General Asdith doesn't come after me. Skiyu said, visibly relieved. Almost everyone in the Imperial Court knew how dangerous Asdith was. She didn't care about ranks. If someone offended her, she wouldn't hesitate to kill them. After all, General Asdith was the Empire's strongest, and aside from Great General Do, no one could restrain her. Asdith is currently leading a campaign against the northern tribes, so she won't be back for a while. But don't worry, I'll inform her when the time comes. Prime Minister Honest said confidently. Asdith was a born warmonger, a natural predator. To her, battle and slaughter always came first. Honest's understanding of Asdith was indeed deep. Later in the original story, she developed her ultimate move, Ice Commander-in-Chief, which created a blizzard capable of engulfing the entire empire. Ordinary people couldn't survive in such an environment, only the strong could. Her reasoning was simple: not only could it wipe out enemy armies, but it also served as a test to separate the strong from the weak. As for the weak, she had no interest in their survival. Even when it came to her subordinates' families, she only showed the slightest consideration. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Asdith a living calamity, a force of nature with a will of its own. The only thing that could ever shake her was falling in love at first sight. Because of this, Prime Minister Honest had no concerns about Asdith. As long as he could provide her with the war she craved, she would have no reason to cause trouble. Alright then. While General Asdith is busy fighting the northern tribes, I'll deal with that kid quickly. Better to take care of it before anything unexpected happens. With that, Skiyu stood up and left. Meanwhile, Chelsea had returned to the Revolutionary Army's headquarters in the southern region of the Empire. She was not yet a member of Nitrade and was still working directly under the main command of the Revolutionary Army. Having shifted back from her black cat transformation, she now appeared in her usual human form, a striking young woman with long, orange-pink hair and a slender, graceful figure. She wore an English-style uniform paired with black, ribbon-tied boots. Her distinct features included vibrant orange-red eyes, a headset resting over her ears, and a lollipop between her lips, an unmistakable signature look. Chapter 66, White Mask Set Few, finally back. Chelsea felt a sense of relief as she returned to the Revolutionary Army headquarters after several days away. That said, during her time infiltrating the Empire's assassination unit, she hadn't found herself particularly worried. On the contrary, her target had actually taken good care of her. It was all thanks to her decision to transform into a black cat on a whim. Had she chosen a different form, she doubted it would have worked out as well. The Revolutionary Army headquarters was located in the southern region of the Empire. The base covered a vast area and wasn't particularly hidden. The Revolutionary Army had a certain level of confidence. They possessed several Tegu of their own and weren't too concerned about the Empire discovering their base's exact location. Additionally, they had formed alliances with the western region and the northern tribes. The Empire was already preoccupied with fending off those external threats and had little capacity to focus on the Revolutionary Army. Of course, this alliance had come at the cost of ceding imperial territory. Otherwise, those foreign nations would never have agreed to cooperate so easily. For now, the Revolutionary Army had ample time to prepare for the Empire's downfall. Chelsea, you're finally back. How did it go? The moment she returned, someone immediately approached her for an update. Not bad. I've learned a lot about the target. Let's hear it. That guy, I remember, he's the commander of the Empire's assassination unit. Is he really as upright as Nagenda claimed? The Revolutionary Army had an extremely low opinion of the Empire's assassination unit. To them, it was nothing more than a group of mindless killers led by a bloodthirsty commander. Akam was the sole exception, but only just. And Blaine? He was an even more exceptional figure, an assassination unit commander. They found it hard to believe that someone like him could truly become an ally. Surprisingly, yeah. He's different from any Imperial official I've ever met. Honestly, he gives off a vibe that's even more principled than the so-called conscientious party. Chelsea's assessment was straightforward. More principled than the conscientious party? He's an assassination unit commander, how is that even possible? The person was immediately skeptical. I get why you'd think that, but I'm just telling you what I saw with my own eyes. Chelsea shrugged, exasperated. She then recounted her experiences within the Empire's assassination unit over the past few days to the Revolutionary Army's key leaders. Of course, she deliberately left out certain details like the part where Blaine had helped her bathe. Some things were just too embarrassing to mention. As expected, Nitrade's instincts were spot on. Just like Najunda said, Blaine is definitely someone worth recruiting. After reviewing Chelsea's report, the Revolutionary Army's leaders formally classified Blaine as a potential ally. And what about what you said earlier, Blaine trying to change those kids in the assassination unit? Are you certain about that? They were particularly interested in this point. After all, the Imperial assassination unit was one of their primary adversaries. If Blaine was truly working to change those children, the best-case scenario would be successfully bringing Blaine over to their side. If that happened, the assassination unit itself might follow under his leadership, turning from a formidable enemy into a valuable ally. That would be a massive advantage for the Revolutionary Army. I'm not completely certain, but it's highly likely. Chelsea said. He's gone against his superiors on multiple occasions, halting brainwashing, reducing drug dosages, even taking those kids out to explore the Imperial capital. Taking such risks means he must have a clear intent. Hearing this, several key leaders nodded. Whether he succeeds in changing the Empire's assassination unit or not, his current situation is dangerous. This is the perfect time for us to win him over. Agreed. Chelsea, after this, head over to support Nitrade. Also, inform Najunda about this matter and have her take charge of recruiting Blaine, just like she did with Akam. But if you're still not over what happened with Orberg, we can have someone else take your place for now. Orberg had been the organization Chelsea was previously affiliated with, an assassination unit under the Revolutionary Army, much like Nitrade. While she had only been away on a mission for a few days, by the time she returned, the Empire's assassination unit had completely wiped out Orberg. The leaders were concerned that she hadn't fully recovered from the loss. The death of even a single comrade was difficult to bear, let alone losing all of them at once. I'm fine. They all completed their missions with honor. At least they had no regrets. Chelsea said with a natural expression. Is that so? Then there's no problem. With that, the leaders let go of their worries. As Chelsea left the meeting room, her face remained composed, but the moment she was out of sight, a fleeting sadness flashed across her eyes. Takeo, the adorable yet naive girl. Mraid, the eccentric but dependable leader. Gilberta, Cassandra. So many comrades she had once fought alongside were now gone. How could she truly not care? She had simply forced herself to forget, numbing herself with excuses. She had lost too many companions before. Crying wouldn't bring them back, and dwelling on sorrow would only waste time. So, she quickly pushed those thoughts aside. Needing a distraction, her mind instinctively wandered to Blaine. I ran off so suddenly. I bet that guy was a little upset. If I get the chance next time, I'll thank him. He really did take care of me all those days. Placing her hands behind her back, Chelsea walked away with light steps. She couldn't wait to surprise Blaine the next time they met. That guy would never guess that the little stray black cat from before was actually her. The thought instantly lifted her mood, and she found herself looking forward to their next encounter. But first, she needed to head to Nitrade's base and relay the leader's decision about Blaine. Perhaps influenced by Blaine, Chelsea ended up joining Nitrade earlier than expected. Meanwhile, the main character of all this, Blaine, had no idea. At that moment, he was busy testing out the white mask he had just obtained. The mask was pure white, adorned with a Rinai pattern, featuring 3 tomoe-shaped holes, 2 of which perfectly aligned with his eyes. Its functions were twofold. First, wearing it granted a +10 boost to all attributes, including ocular power. Second, it was intricately linked to the Gunbai Akaiwa. Both items were part of the white mask set. And obtaining the white mask was a prerequisite for purchasing the Gunbai Akaiwa. Chapter 67, Akaya Fan, Host, Blaine, Age, 18, Strength, 50, +10, Agility, 50, +10, Constitution, 130, +10, Ocular Power, +10, System Points, 54, Existing Items, White Mask, System Shop Level 2. With a thought, Blaine opened the system panel and confirmed that all his attributes had indeed increased by 10 points. In other words, he had spent just 10 system points on a mask worth 40 system points in absolute steel. Of course, the attribute boost only applied while he was wearing the mask, but that wasn't a problem. After all, wearing a mask wouldn't hinder him in combat. More importantly, the white mask was part of a set with the Gunbai Akaiwa. He needed the mask before he could purchase and use the fan. Ding. The host has redeemed Tiger Skin Mask 1. Deducting 10 system points, Blaine had also redeemed the tiger skin mask from the Crimson Night Blade set to test the bounty weapon, Crimson Night Blade, and see what it was capable of. He then opened the system shop. Item: White Mask Set. Details: the starting item White Mask has been purchased. The next item is Gunbai Akaiwa, modified. With base stats surpassing ordinary Tigu. Effect: absorbs damage and converts it into wind energy for counterattacks. Price: 50 system points. Item: Crimson Night Blade Set. Details: the starting item Tiger Skin Mask has been purchased. The next item is Crimson Night Blade, modified. With base stats stronger than typical Tigu. Effect: greatly enhances the user's abilities at night. Price: 50 system points. Now, he could finally check the details for both the Gunbai Akaiwa and Crimson Night Blade. After reading through them, Blaine immediately understood why they were labeled as modified. It made perfect sense. In a world without chakra or ninjutsu, the Gunbai Akaiwa would be useless without adjustments. Thankfully, its ability to reflect attacks had been preserved. As for Crimson Night Blade, its main modification was its power boost at night, significantly increasing the user's strength. And at 50 system points each, the price was quite reasonable. He couldn't afford them just yet, but considering their value, they weren't expensive. I'll focus on getting these two weapons first. I still need 56 system points. With that in mind, Blaine decided to earn the remaining points by the end of the day. By now, the Empire's assassination unit, led by Blaine, had returned to base. He had only tested the white mask in his room. Naturally, he wouldn't wear it all the time unless he was in combat. "Master, where's Shady?" "I haven't seen it at all," Sarah suddenly asked, realizing the black kitten was missing. "It disappeared on the way back. I doubt it'll return," Blaine replied, his tone carrying a hint of helplessness. "Oh. Maybe Shady prefers the outside world," Sarah said regretfully. "Are you sad, Master?" "Not really. We were planning to find it a proper home once it recovered, weren't we?" Blaine said with a smile. To be honest, he had known from the beginning that the black cat was actually a transformed human. There was no reason for him to be upset. Sarah nodded. "That's true. As long as Master isn't sad, that's all that matters. By the way, I need to head out for a bit. I'll be back by tonight at the latest." "You'll be in charge while I'm gone," Blaine informed her. "Understood. I won't let you down, Master," Sarah responded with enthusiasm. "Just make sure you don't fill their heads with any weird ideas," Blaine added as a reminder. "I won't. Please don't worry, Master." Blaine trusted Sarah's promise. While her sense of justice was a bit twisted, she was simple-minded and easily influenced, but she was always obedient. Back in his room, Blaine activated his right eye and transported himself directly into the Kamui space, a vast, dark dimension completely isolated from the real world. Only he could use the power of double Kamui to freely travel through it, either alone or with others. Aside from a series of towering great pillars, the Kamui space was completely empty. Blaine briefly considered decorating it in the future, but for now, he put the thought aside. Opening another spatial portal, he set his destination to a mountainous forest where special-class danger beasts roamed. Since he had visited this location before, he could precisely lock onto it from the Kamui space. If it were an unfamiliar location, he would have to take a guess and wouldn't be able to teleport with such accuracy. The moment he teleported himself, Blaine donned the white mask. If he was going to hunt danger beasts, there was no reason to waste the +10 boost to all his attributes. As luck would have it, Shiel and Mine were also in the area, training by hunting danger beasts. As he landed, Blaine immediately surveyed his surroundings. A danger beast was right behind him. It seemed startled by Blaine's sudden appearance, locking eyes with him but not attacking right away. Blaine reacted first, drawing his twin swords and throwing them like darts, piercing both of the creature's eyes. The danger beast let out a piercing scream. As Blaine retrieved his swords from its eye sockets, its eyes had already become bloodied craters. He then leaped onto the beast's head, using a spinning sword technique to deliver a clean strike to its massive skull. Ding! The host has slain a Class 1 danger beast. Reward, 10 system points. Meanwhile, not far away, Shiel and Mine heard the beast's agonized cries. That noise. Someone else is hunting danger beasts? Mine immediately became alert, her expression turning serious. This area wasn't far from the night raid base, and usually, no one came here to hunt. If someone was here, there was a chance they were an enemy. Shiel, despite being an airhead most of the time, was never absent-minded in battle. With a cautious and focused expression, she looked toward the source of the sound and asked, "Should we report back first or check it out ourselves?" "Let's check it out first. We know the terrain well, so if things go south, we can use it to escape." Mine made the decision. Meanwhile, Blaine was busy redeeming items, having now accumulated 54 system points. Ding. The host has redeemed Gunbai Akaiwa 1. Deducting 50 system points, Chapter 68, Akai return. After the exchange was successful, the Gunbai Akaiwa appeared in the existing items section of the system panel. With just a thought, Blaine summoned it into his hands. A massive, gourd-shaped fan materialized, its surface adorned with 2 pairs of red Kamui patterns on both sides. A chain was attached to the handle, giving it a unique appearance. Blaine immediately noticed the weight of the fan, but with his current strength stat, wielding it posed no issue. Now that he had obtained the Gunbai Akaiwa, he had no plans to return just yet. He still needed to exchange for the Crimson Knight Blade. With that in mind, Blaine continued searching for danger beasts to hunt. Thanks to his Mangekyō Sharingan, he easily spotted a special class danger beast in the distance. Coincidentally, it was in the same direction as mine and Shiel. As Blaine moved in to hunt the beast, the two, who had been stealthily approaching, unknowingly drew closer to him as well. I might as well test out the Gunbai Akaiwa on this thing. Gripping the fan tightly, Blaine eyed the massive, rhino-like danger beast in front of him. The moment it noticed him, the creature charged at full force. Its enormous body made for an incredibly powerful impact, shaking the ground as it rushed forward. The loud commotion startled Mine and Shiel once again, giving them a clearer idea of where to go. By now, they had gotten close enough to catch sight of the person fighting the beast. From their vantage point in the trees, they watched cautiously. Due to their angle, they could only see the side of his face. Aside from the strange white mask he wore, there was nothing else recognizable except for the unfamiliar fan strapped to his back, which was likely not an ordinary weapon. However, what they could recognize was his outfit, the distinct style of the Empire's assassination unit. That information alone was enough to put them on edge. Mine and Shiel exchanged grave looks. The fact that an operative from the assassination unit had made it this far was concerning. But wasn't the assassination unit known for working in teams? Why was this masked man alone? Or was his squad still nearby? Uncertain of the enemy's numbers, neither Mine nor Shield dared to act rashly. For now, they decided to observe. The masked man was currently dealing with a special class danger beast, providing them with a chance to assess the situation. They watched as the rhino-like danger beast barreled toward him at full speed. Yet, the masked man didn't even attempt to dodge. He stood still, unmoving. Is this guy insane? He's just standing there waiting to get hit? Mine thought in disbelief. Shiel was equally puzzled, but when she saw him lift the fan from his back and take a defensive stance, she started to get an idea of what he was planning. The beast's massive horn, larger than a full-grown adult, crashed straight into Blaine only to be completely stopped by the Gunbai Akaiwa. The impact, along with all the force behind it, was instantly absorbed. Blaine didn't even budge. Immediately after, all the accumulated damage was converted into energy. Kaya return. With a single swing of the Gunbai Akaiwa, Blaine unleashed a violent storm. The resulting gust was strong enough to shatter boulders. Everything in front of him, rocks, trees, and anything in range, was completely torn apart. The rhino-like danger beast was no exception. Its armored hide was instantly ripped open, chunks of its flesh torn away by the raging winds. However, it wasn't quite enough to kill it outright. After all, the Gunbai Akaiwa's ability relied on absorbing the opponent's attack and reflecting it back. In other words, the damage dealt depended on the power of the enemy's own strike. Essentially, the beast had run headfirst into its own attack, but that alone wasn't enough to kill it. Blaine swiftly followed up, swinging the Gunbai Akaiwa like a massive hammer. Even without its reflection ability, the fan's base stats were superior to most Tigu. With its armor broken and its body already heavily damaged, the danger beast was left completely vulnerable. With a final, decisive strike, its massive head was sent flying. As the body of the rhino-shaped danger beast stopped moving, Blaine earned system points. Ding. The host has hunted a special class danger beast and received a reward, 20 system points. Seeing this unfold, Shiel and Mine were both stunned. They didn't understand the mechanics behind the round fan's ability, but their first thought was that it had to be a Tigu. There were only 48 Tigu in existence, and not only had most people never seen all of them, but no one knew every detail about them. Even searching through the Empire's ancient records wouldn't provide complete information. They were heavily fragmented. It made sense. No emperor would allow records to document Tigu too thoroughly. If those books ever fell into enemy hands, it would be like handing them a weapon against the Empire. To Shiel and Mine, the fan in the masked man's hands was most likely one of the 48 Tigu. From what they had gathered so far, this person was both a Tigu user and a member of the Empire's assassination unit. That was bad news. Worse still, he wasn't among the known members of the assassination unit, which meant that at some point, they had gained another Tigu user. The enemy kept evolving, making things even more dangerous for night trade. Just then, Shield and Mine noticed that the masked man had begun dealing with the danger beast's corpse, his back turned to them. Now's our chance to take him out. Without hesitation, Mine raised Pumpkin, ready to fire an energy blast. This was their best opening. Sooner or later, they would have to fight him, and they couldn't afford to waste this opportunity. Wait. I think he's already noticed us. Shield warned. The masked man had turned his head slightly to the right, his right eye casting a cold sidelong glance in their direction, almost as if he was warning them. His gaze met Shield's. In truth, Blaine had sensed them from the start. Unless someone was completely out of his sight or capable of true invisibility, nothing could evade his Mangekyō Sharingan. He simply hadn't intended to act unless they moved against him first. As Shield locked eyes with him, she took notice of his crimson pupils. Those strange yet familiar blood-red eyes instantly reminded her of a certain boy. Mine. Maybe he's not our enemy. Chapter 69, Shield and Mine. We've been discovered? Mine found it hard to believe. How could he be so perceptive? Her finger, which had been about to pull the trigger of Pumpkin, hesitated for a moment. Luckily, that moment of hesitation meant she didn't fire. If she had, Blaine would have undoubtedly used the Gunbyakuiwa to deflect the energy wave right back at them. Wait. How are you so sure he's not our enemy? Before she could finish her sentence, Mine suddenly noticed something familiar about the masked man's right eye. That scarlet hue, that unmistakable pattern, it was too distinctive. That's Blaine's eye. Even with the mask, I'm almost certain it's him. She'll explained. Blaine's current appearance was completely different from what they remembered. Not only was he wearing a white mask, but he had also swapped out his previous dual swords for the Gunbyakuiwa. If not for his uniquely recognizable eyes, they wouldn't have realized who he was. Mine nodded. I noticed it too. What's he doing here? And why is he dressed so weirdly? Maybe he's hunting danger beasts like us. I'm going down to say hi. With that, Shield prepared to jump down from the tree. Wait. We don't even know why he's here. Isn't his a bit reckless? Mine quickly warned. It's fine. Didn't Akam already say he doesn't mean us any harm? Shield replied. Besides, I heard that the Revolutionary Army's spy returned safely with good news. Doesn't that mean Blaine might actually become our ally? Fine. Mine sighed. She lowered Pumpkin, sensing that even though Blaine had noticed them, he showed no intent to attack. Shield was the first to leap down. Despite her airheaded demeanor, she was incredibly agile, landing smoothly before walking toward Blaine with the cutter of creation strapped to her back. After a brief hesitation, Mine followed behind her. Excuse me. You're Blaine, right? Shield asked to confirm. So, you recognized me. Are you two here for training as well? Blaine responded in a neutral yet friendly tone. Shield gave a small nod. Yes. So, you're training here too? Something like that. Just happened to run into you. Blaine replied casually. To an outsider, their conversation might have seemed like a reunion between old friends. Nothing about it suggested a confrontation between sworn enemies Night Raid and the Empire's assassination unit. You're really not here to attack us? Mine, who had been standing behind Shield, now stepped forward with a questioning gaze. Of course not. Once I'm done hunting danger beasts, I'll be on my way. No need to worry about me. Blaine stated bluntly. He hadn't expected to run into Night Raid members here either. Hearing his response, Mine started to think she might have been overreacting. Maybe he really was just hunting danger beasts and had unknowingly strayed close to their base. Alright then, suit yourself. But seriously, what's with the weird getup? She finally couldn't hold back from commenting on his mask. Why wear a mask at all? It just made him look even more suspicious, like he was here to attack them. Personal preference. Blaine couldn't be bothered to explain and had no intention of taking off the white mask. Without it, he wouldn't be able to use the Gunbyakuiwa properly. Plus, it provided an all-around stat boost. Using the fan didn't drain him much either, certainly not as much as the dual Kamui technique. At most, it just required a bit of strength and took a slight toll on his stamina. Mine couldn't understand this so-called hobby. It definitely looked intimidating. She had to admit it had a certain oppressive aura. If she hadn't recognized Blaine, the eerie mystery of that white mask would have made her even more nervous. If you don't mind, could we talk for a bit? Shield spoke sincerely to Blaine. Mine immediately realized what she was implying and whispered, Shield, you're not seriously planning to bring that up with him, are you? Shield gave a small nod. It's rare to meet him alone. Wouldn't it be a waste to let the chance slip by? Besides fighting, I want to do something that can actually help everyone. The Imperial Assassination Unit usually worked in groups, making it difficult to find an opportunity to talk to Blaine alone. If they wanted to recruit him into the Revolutionary Army and Night Raid, they had to do it one-on-one. The other members of the Assassination Unit were still openly hostile toward Night Raid, meaning Blaine was the only one they could approach. Another big reason was that Shield was hopeless when it came to anything outside of combat. She genuinely wanted to help, but more often than not, she made things worse, like that one time she accidentally threw mine into the washing machine along with the laundry. She had always wanted to find her own value. Being a night raid assassin had given her a purpose, but if she could do more, she absolutely wanted to try. You're not wrong, but he's still part of the Empire's assassination unit. We should be careful. Mine said, though she didn't try to stop Shield. I will be. Shield assured her with a smile. I don't mind, but I need to hunt a few more danger beasts first. It won't take long. If you're willing to wait, go ahead. Blaine said bluntly. He had no idea what they wanted to talk about, but he was sure it wasn't as important as acquiring the Crimson Night Blade. Earning enough system points for the exchange was his top priority. No problem, I'll wait. Shield agreed without hesitation. Mine wasn't thrilled about Blaine's attitude making them wait like this, but since Shield had already agreed, she didn't argue. Blaine then continued his hunt for danger beasts, with Shield and Mine following along. By the way, isn't your eye technically a Tegu? How are you even handling two at once? Mine suddenly asked. No comment. Blaine thought for a moment but chose not to explain, since it involved double Kamui. What's with that attitude? Mine muttered, feeling her irritation build. Alright, asking personal stuff like that probably isn't fair. Shield tried to smooth things over. Blaine, however, turned to them seriously and said, let's get one thing straight, don't try to compete with me for the danger beasts. Chapter 70, Shield's promise. Blaine was just short of outright saying, let me have all the experience points for myself. But if he had, Shield and Mine might have actually understood. After all, in the world of Akame, the concept existed. One of Asdith's three beasts, for instance, constantly rambled about experience points. TCH, as if we'd even want to help you. Mine huffed. Okay. Shield, however, responded cheerfully, showing no complaints. As they followed Blaine, Shield took the initiative to speak. I don't think I've introduced myself yet. My name is Shield. Blaine didn't actually know their names. He could tell they were Night Raid members because he recognized Pumpkin in Mine's hands. During his previous encounter with Night Raid, he hadn't gotten a good look at Shield or Mine. Back then, aside from Akame, the entire team had kept their faces hidden under hoods. But Mine's Pumpkin was unforgettable. Last time, she had fired a shot at both him and Kurum. Blaine found it a bit odd that Shield was being so proactive, even introducing herself so openly. Is she trying to recruit me? He wondered. Well, since you already know who I am, I'll introduce myself anyway. I'm Blaine. He responded politely to Shield's friendliness. Mine, however, seemed unwilling to introduce herself and remain silent. Blaine didn't mind. In fact, her attitude seemed completely reasonable to him. Ding. The host has hunted a Class 1 Danger Beast and received 10 system points. Ding. The host has hunted a Class 2 Danger Beast and received 5 system points. Since all the Danger Beasts he encountered next were low tier, Blaine didn't even need to use the gun by Akaiwa's reflection ability. He could just swing it and take them down effortlessly. After casually killing a few, he had accumulated enough system points plus a little extra. System points, 64, ding. The host has redeemed a Crimson Night Blade, deducting 50 system points. The redeemed Crimson Night Blade was stored in the system's inventory rather than appearing directly in Blaine's hands. There was no need for him to take it out just yet. Alright, I'm done. Blaine said to Shield. Good. Then let's talk here. Shield replied. Blaine gave a slight nod. The last time we were in the Imperial capital, you didn't seem hostile toward us, did you? Shield got straight to the point. Well, since your targets are corrupt officials who deserve to be executed, I don't see any reason to consider you my enemies. Blaine answered bluntly. There was no one else around, so he had no problem being honest. So that's how you see it. Although Najunda had long believed that Blaine was a rare, upright official within the Empire, Shield was still a little surprised to hear him openly express his views on Night Raid. She continued, in that case, you should understand our goal to overthrow the Empire's tyranny and bring true happiness to the people. I understand. Blaine nodded. Hearing this, Shield smiled brightly, feeling hopeful that they might actually win him over. If possible, we'd like you to join us. She wasted no time extending the invitation. Blaine had originally planned to refuse outright, but seeing Shield's innocent and expectant smile, he hesitated for a moment. Instead of a blunt rejection, he responded more tactfully, I'm afraid I'll have to decline. I have my own matters to take care of, so I can't join you. Is that so? Alright. Shield's smile stiffened slightly. Mine was also a bit surprised at how decisively Blaine refused, but when she thought about it, it wasn't unexpected. She remained composed and said, She'll just let it go. Turning against the Empire takes an enormous amount of courage and comes with a lot of trouble. When Akam left the Imperial Assassination Unit to join the Revolutionary Army, it had caused a massive upheaval. Blaine didn't intend to explain further. After all, his plan to establish the Akatsuki organization was still in the works. Well, I just hope you won't reject us so quickly. I'm not great at explaining things, but if our boss speaks with you, she'll be able to lay everything out much more clearly. She'll wasn't ready to give up just yet. I won't say no to a conversation, but let me make it clear I'll probably still refuse in the end. Blaine stated directly. If what She'll said was true, and the leader of Night Raid could provide him with valuable information, then he figured it was worth listening. You can decide then. She'll nodded. Do as you like. Mine said coldly. After realizing Blaine had no intention of joining them, she was even less willing to introduce herself, and her attitude turned noticeably colder. 3 days from now, same time, same place. We'll be waiting here for you. She'll said, setting a meeting time. She had carefully calculated the timing the messenger from the Revolutionary Army headquarters would need time to reach Night Raid's base, and they also needed to prepare properly. If they wanted to recruit someone as important as Blaine, they couldn't afford to be careless. She'll blamed herself for his rejection, thinking she had been too hasty. She hadn't explained enough before attempting to recruit him so abruptly. If it had been Nagenda handling this, she surely would have done a much better job. That thought only made She'll more frustrated with herself. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way. Blaine said, preparing to leave. No, nothing else. She'll nodded. Then, see you. With that, Blaine turned and walked away. Once he was out of She'll and Mine's sight, he used Kamui to shift into his personal dimension. The next moment, he teleported back to the Imperial Assassination Unit space. As soon as he arrived, the first thing he saw was Kurum, and the others locked in a standoff with a group of unknown individuals. At this moment, Blaine had yet to remove his white mask, and the gun by Akaiwa was still strapped to his back. His sudden appearance caught the strangers off guard, leaving them momentarily stunned. Even the members of the assassination unit hesitated for a second before realizing the masked figure was actually Blaine. Who are you? The unfamiliar individuals immediately grew wary, their leader stepping forward to confront Blaine. The man at the front wore a hawk-beaked mask, and his right forearm was fitted with a strange device that resembled a remote control, likely some kind of Tegu. Among them, more than 3 were suspected Tegu users. Chapter 71, Atmosphere of Despair. Before Blaine left the base to hunt danger beasts, an uninvited group arrived at the assassination unit's headquarters. They had been sent by Skiu to carry out his orders. Skiu was well aware that, besides Blaine, the Empire's assassination unit had 2 other Tegu users, the wielder of Hecatonkyres, and Kurum, the wielder of Yatsufusa. To ensure things went smoothly, he had dispatched 3 Tegu users of his own. Although Kurum, having undergone repeated brainwashing, was unlikely to resist, it was always better to be cautious. Of course, these men weren't here to pick a fight with Blaine outright. They would only resort to violence if necessary. However, upon arriving at the base, they found that Blaine was already gone. Where is Blaine? Where did he go? The man leading the group, wearing a hawk-beaked mask, stepped forward and questioned Sari with an overbearing tone. My master went out on business. What do you want with him? Despite the man's harsh attitude, Sari remained composed, showing no signs of displeasure. It was clear at a glance these men had been sent from higher up. We have orders to arrest him. This is a direct command from Lord Skiu. We hope you will cooperate and not make any pointless attempts to resist. The hawk-masked man then added coldly, but aside from Blaine, you'll also have to come with us. Blaine was Skiu's biggest thorn in the side, and Sari was the next greatest concern. There was no way they could allow her to remain in the Empire's assassination unit. However, since Hecatonkyres had only ever shown compatibility with Sari, she was considered a rare asset. And because she wasn't the primary target, Skiu didn't intend to dispose of her. Instead, his plan was to put her through the same brainwashing process as the other assassination unit members, ensuring her absolute loyalty to the Empire and preventing any further complications. You're arresting Master? Sari's heart sank. The very thing she had feared was happening. Her master's actions had indeed drawn the dissatisfaction of the higher-ups. Now, both she and her master were going to be dealt with. That's right. That brat couldn't keep his nose out of things. What he did was a direct affront to Lord Skiu. Frankly, exterminating his entire bloodline wouldn't even be excessive. The hawk-masked man sneered. There's no saving him. But if you behave and follow orders, Lord Skiu is willing to let you live. Sari fell silent. She was torn. On one side was the Empire she had sworn loyalty to. On the other was her master, the person she admired most. She didn't want to betray the Empire. But she couldn't bear to see her master executed either. What should she do? Let's wait here for him to return. Also, gather the rest of the assassination unit, we have something to announce. The masked man ordered. Saru immediately went to notify the others, using the moment to steady herself. She had finally sorted out her thoughts. The things she and her master had done were not truly evil, it was Skyu, the so-called great talent, who was tainted with evil. Even though Skyu was a high-ranking official of the Empire, she could never submit to evil. That was what her late father had taught her, and she had always held on to those words. Even if it meant betraying the Empire. In the end, her master was more important. Once she gathered everyone, Saru explained the situation in detail. Hearing that Commander Blaine and Commander Saru were to be dealt with, Blaine even facing execution, the group was momentarily unable to accept it. And it wasn't just Blaine and Saru in danger. The men sent by Lord Skyu had summoned them for a reason, and it certainly wasn't for idle conversation. They could guess they were about to face punishment as well. Before Commander Blaine's arrival, the Empire's assassination unit had always been ruthlessly strict. With heavy expressions, they stepped forward to face the men. The entire assassination unit is present? The masked man asked. Yes, everyone is here. Kurum replied flatly. She appeared calm on the surface, but inside, her emotions were in turmoil. Not only were her comrades in grave danger, but Commander Blaine was about to be executed. She had long anticipated that this day would come, but now that it was actually happening, she found herself completely unprepared to face it. TSK, so it's just you lot left? What a pathetic bunch. The masked man sneered. Despite the open mockery and insults, none of the assassination unit members dared to complain. They even forced themselves to keep any dissatisfaction from showing on their faces. Kurum slightly lowered her head, remaining silent. Seeing that no one dared to speak, the masked man continued coldly, anyway, your little streak of good fortune is over. Your recent performance has greatly disappointed Lord Skyu, so you will be punished. There's someone named Yasha, isn't there? According to the Empire's assassination unit regulations, she was supposed to be dealt with before. Naturally, she won't be spared. The punishment will proceed as scheduled tonight. As for the rest of you, you'll be confined for 3 days. During that time, you will receive no medical treatment. But before your confinement there's still Yasha. You all need to personally execute Commander Blaine. Each of you will take a turn cutting him, piece by piece, until he dies. Otherwise, your punishment will be far worse. As he spoke the last sentence, the masked man's gaze turned sharp and ruthless. His expression was hidden beneath the mask, but it wasn't hard to imagine the twisted, sadistic grin lurking underneath. He relished the sight of despair. Forcing them to personally carve apart their most trusted and respected commander, there was no punishment more cruel than this. At his words, Yasha's face instantly turned deathly pale. She had no way of escaping her punishment after all. She had just begun to see hope again, only to be dragged back into the depths of despair. And this time, it was even worse than if she had been dealt with from the start. To personally execute Commander Blaine? That was something she could never accept. Kurum and the others felt the same. If they were to be executed or tortured, they would accept it. But to be forced to personally tear apart Commander Blaine? That was something they could never bring themselves to do. Yet, they had no options. Before the men sent by Lord Skyu, they had no power to resist. Obey, or die. They didn't want to harm Commander Blaine. But they didn't want to die, either. They had not yet gained the Empire's recognition. If they were executed here, then all their fallen comrades would have died in vain. Watching their reactions, the masked man was utterly delighted. The overwhelming despair in the air sent a thrill through him. He lived for moments like these. Just then, Kurum became the first and only one to step forward in defiance. With an icy expression, she said firmly, I refuse to execute Commander Blaine in such a manner. Chapter 72, all of you, come at me together. That's right, we refuse to do this. Me too. Punishment or discipline, whatever, but this is something we absolutely won't do. Kurum's defiance immediately ignited the others, and they all voiced their protests. Their unexpected resistance caught the masked man off guard. It seemed that Blaine had indeed spoiled these people, making them bold enough to stand against orders. Another likely reason was that they hadn't undergone their scheduled brainwashing last time, weakening its effects. Rather than backing down, the masked man only grew more vicious. He sneered, refuse? Fine, then you can wait for the torture. Let's see how long you can keep up this brave front. In the Empire, there was no shortage of cruel and inhumane tortures. Even so, Kurum refused to yield. Still, their resistance remained only in words. They dared not take direct action. Because acting against orders would be outright betrayal of the Empire. Even with the brainwashing weakened, the idea of never defying the Empire was still deeply ingrained in their subconscious. At that moment, Sarah struggled to suppress her urge to eradicate evil. Her master had warned her time and again not to act impulsively, and now was the worst possible moment for rash actions. She clutched Koro tightly, as if afraid the creature might suddenly lash out or perhaps as a way to restrain herself. Take them away. At the masked man's command, the soldiers stepped forward. As they closed in, Kurum and the others hesitated, torn between resisting or submitting. Just then, a tall, slender figure suddenly appeared between the two sides. A mysterious white mask covered his face, and on his back, he carried a massive, strange-looking fan. His sudden arrival stunned everyone. "Who are you?" Ignoring the demand, Blaine studied the men in front of him. Their armor was the standard issue of Imperial soldiers. That alone made their origins obvious. They had likely been sent by the higher-ups. Given their aggressive stance, they clearly weren't here for a friendly chat. "If you're looking for Blaine, then you've found him," he said calmly. "So, you're Blaine?" The man wearing a hawk-beaked mask sneered. "Come quietly. Lord Skiu has issued an order for your arrest." Blaine didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, he turned to Saru and the others. "What happened here? Fill me in first." "Master." The moment she saw him, Saru's face lit up with joy. Good thing she had held herself back earlier. Waiting had paid off. "Commander." Kurum also smiled, but the relief was fleeting. Almost immediately, her expression darkened with concern. There was still a serious crisis at hand. Saru quickly summarized what had happened, keeping it brief. Upon hearing the situation, Blaine's gaze turned ice cold. If they had only come for him, he wouldn't have cared. But targeting Saru, Kurum, and the others? That, he could not tolerate. Initially, he had only planned to resist. Now, he wanted these men dead. Reaching behind him, he gripped the chain attached to his gunbai and drew it out. Seeing him ready for battle, the masked man's eyes hardened. "Are you planning to rebel?" he asked in a low voice. Blaine had no interest in answering such pointless nonsense. His life was on the line. If he didn't fight back, was he supposed to just wait to die? "You should think this through carefully. The cost of rebellion is that everyone around you will suffer because of you." The masked man continued to threaten Blaine. However, Blaine was unfazed and took the initiative to attack. He quickly called out to Saru, "Saru, I'll leave their protection to you." He hadn't asked Kurum and the others to join the fight, knowing they were still hesitant about turning against the Empire. Though in his view, this wasn't betrayal, just an act of self-preservation. Did absolute obedience really mean loyalty, even when faced with high-ranking officials who were completely irrational, if not outright insane? Yes. Saru immediately moved to shield Kurum and the others. Even so, she was deeply worried about her master. He was facing numerous enemies alone, and among them, there were surely Tegu users. Seeing Blaine charge forward, the masked man let out a cold snort and pressed a button strapped to his right forearm, resembling a remote control. The moment he pressed it, shells suddenly appeared from all directions, raining down on Blaine. This was clearly a Tegu's ability, though its exact nature was unknown. It was obviously a trap-type Tegu, capable of conjuring traps out of thin air. But against Blaine, such a Tegu was meaningless. With the heightened perception granted by the Mangekyō Sharingan, even sudden ambushes wouldn't catch him off guard. Since the barrage was coming from all directions, the Gunbai Akaiwa couldn't block everything at once. Blaine first used the Gunbai Akaiwa to absorb the impact of the shells coming from the front. The masked man sneered. "You can block the ones in front of you, but what about the ones from behind?" However, his smirk instantly vanished when he saw the shells from the other three directions phase straight through Blaine's body without leaving a scratch. In fact, the ones that passed through him continued on, now flying toward the masked man and his group. Panicked, the masked man quickly pressed another button on his remote, causing the incoming shells to disappear just before impact. Kaya return. Taking advantage of the distraction, Blaine suddenly swung the Gunbai Akaiwa, sending back the energy absorbed from the earlier shells straight at the masked man. However, the attack's power was limited. It had only absorbed a few shells. Even so, the shockwave sent weaker soldiers flying, slamming them into the walls and leaving deep dents. Many were knocked unconscious, while the rest could barely move. Only 6 remained standing, including the masked man, clearly all Tegu and Shin users. The masked man wielded a trap-type Tegu, while the others had already revealed their own Tegu and Shin. What kind of Tegu is that? The masked man stared at Blaine in shock. Facing the 6 opponents before him, Blaine remained calm and unfazed. His gaze was indifferent. "Come at me together. It'll save time." Chapter 73, One Against Many. "Stop acting like you're some kind of god." Feeling humiliated, the masked man flew into a rage. No matter what kind of Tegu their opponent was using, They had 3 Tigu users and 3 Shin users on their side. The power gap between Tigu users was usually not that significant. If the 6 of them couldn't take down a single Tigu user, they would be nothing but a joke. Unless, of course, their enemy was someone like General Asdith, the Empire's undisputed strongest. A warrior in a league of her own. In the original story, Najunda once stated that to defeat Asdith, at least 10 Tigu users including Akam would be needed, along with an army of over 50,000 elite soldiers. Yet in reality, even that wasn't enough. Aside from Akam, who used Morasame's secret technique to amplify her strength with its deadly curse, the rest of the Revolutionary Army's Tigu users couldn't even stand against Asdith in direct combat. As for those so-called elite soldiers, no matter how many they had, they were useless. After enduring relentless attacks, Asdith was only defeated when Akam forced her to turn herself into ice dust using Morasame's unavoidable death curse, proving beyond doubt why she was called the strongest. Clearly, the masked man and his group had categorized Blaine as just another ordinary Tigu user. After all, there was only one Asdith. If every Tigu user were as strong as her, the Empire would have crumbled long ago. This brat is way too cocky. He actually thinks he can take on all 6 of us at once. A burly man wielding a hammer-shaped Tigu scoffed. I heard this kid's a real pretty boy. A plump woman holding a horn-shaped Tigu added. What a shame he's wearing a mask. I just love taking care of handsome young men. You mean feeding him to your danger beasts, don't you? The burly man quipped. Well, what choice do I have? The woman giggled seductively. I can't bear to let my babies go hungry. Though, to be fair, I did feed them once before coming here. Enough with the chatter. Cripple his arms and legs first, make sure he can't fight back. The masked man ordered coldly. At his command, the other 2 Tigu users grew serious, moving in unison to attack Blaine. Commander Sarang, we should help Commander Blaine. Watching Blaine prepare to fight back, Kurum seemed to have made up her mind. At this point, there was no turning back. If Blaine lost, they would all be implicated and executed. In that case, she might as well risk everything. She couldn't die yet. Not until she had killed her sister with her own hands. Kurum, do we really have to do this? Kelly asked in a low voice. It wasn't just her. Aside from Kurum, none of the assassination unit members had fully made up their minds. Or what? Are we just going to stand here and watch Commander Blaine get overwhelmed and killed? After that, we'll be next. There's no escaping death. Maybe this is betrayal, but if we all die, then what's the point? Kurum voiced her thoughts. She had made her decision faster than the others because her feelings for Commander Blaine were different. You're right. As expected, Kurum is calmer and smarter than us. My mind is a complete mess right now. Either way, it's death. We might as well go all in. At least, in all my time with Commander Blaine, I've never been this happy. Kurum's resolve, along with Blaine's fearless defiance, made the others waver even more. If you've already made up your minds, then fight. Sarah's voice was filled with conviction. Master always said that these evil people don't represent the Empire. We are upholding justice, not betraying it. If anything, we're purging the filth from within. Her words struck a chord with everyone. Even if they weren't the most persuasive, they provided just the justification they needed to push forward enough to ease the subconscious weight of betraying the Empire. Seeing that the assassination unit was about to intervene, the masked man's heart sank. Damn it. He hastily ordered, quick. Finish this as fast as possible. As a trap Tigu user, he wasn't suited for direct combat, so he remained in the back, coordinating the fight while using his Tigu to harass Blaine. The first to attack was the burly man wielding a hammer-shaped Tigu. He charged in and swung his weapon down with immense force. Blaine instantly raised his Gunbyakuiwa to block the strike. Got him. The burly man sneered, certain of his victory. His Tigu had an incredibly powerful ability, absolute penetration. No matter how tough an opponent's armor was, it would pierce right through, completely ignoring all defenses. Even blocking with a weapon wouldn't negate its effects. On top of that, its destructive power was immense. A weaker Tigu could be shattered by a single blow. However, the next moment, the burly man's grin vanished. Blaine stood completely unscathed. As disbelief flashed across his opponent's face, Blaine's lips curved into a smirk. Ugh, I return. With an internal shout, a violent storm erupted, sweeping toward the enemy. This windstorm was far stronger than before on a completely different level from the previous trap-based attacks. No matter how lethal an enemy's Tigu was, regardless of penetration abilities, the Gunbyakuiwa could absorb and redirect it, making it the perfect counter to the hammer's power. Its only real limitation was that it couldn't defend against attacks coming from multiple directions at once. Gah! The burly man's clothes were shredded by the raging winds, his body torn open in multiple places, with exposed bone visible in some areas. He tumbled backward, barely managing to stabilize himself by driving his hammer into the ground. That single strike had already cost him dearly. One or two more would spell his death. Just then, multiple flying danger beasts suddenly appeared in the sky. Summoned by the plump woman's horn-shaped Tegu, the creatures dove toward Blaine in unison. Their speed was astonishing, and some launched attacks mid-flight: feathers, bone spikes, energy blasts forming a near-impenetrable barrage from all directions. At the same time, additional traps materialized out of thin air, further complicating Blaine's situation. Koro. Realizing the danger, Suru immediately commanded Koro to protect his master. The massive Koro leaped in front of Blaine. But Blaine was already gone. He had teleported directly in front of the burly man, swinging the Gunbyakuwa to finish the job. Chapter 74, Kurum's embrace. None of them, including the burly man, had any idea that Blaine possessed teleportation abilities. Still injured, he had no time to react. Only despair and terror filled his eyes as the massive fan swung toward him. In the next moment, his vision spun rapidly. His head twisted through the air, rotating countless times before finally crashing to the ground. Even then, he wasn't completely dead. As he saw his own headless corpse beside him, realization struck, and an overwhelming sense of hopelessness consumed him. A few moments later, his consciousness faded entirely, his face frozen in an expression of unwilling defeat. Ding. The host has slain a Tegu user and earned 40 system points. Blaine instantly received the corresponding reward. A thought crossed his mind: killing Tegu users granted quite a lot of system points. Weren't these people just here to deliver him free points? 3 Tegu users and 3 Shin users. That was at least 100 points waiting to be collected. Damn it. Watching his comrade get killed, the masked man felt a deep sense of dread. They had severely underestimated Blaine's strength, especially his ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. It was completely abnormal. And worst of all, no matter what they tried, they couldn't land a single hit on him. How were they supposed to fight someone like this? They had never seen or even heard of a Tegu with such ridiculous capabilities. Wasn't this essentially invincibility? As shock overwhelmed the masked man, Kurum had already drawn her blade and slashed at him without warning. Fortunately, his close combat skills weren't lacking. He quickly dodged and countered with the short blade equipped on his other arm. Little girl, I'll give you one last chance. The punishment you deserve can still be erased. Sensing how dear the situation had become, the masked man tried to sway the assassination unit to his side. But before he could finish, Kurum's sword was already swinging at him again. She clearly had no interest in his words. Her resolve to follow Commander Blaine was unwavering. Yatsufusa. When 2 strikes weren't enough to finish the job, Kurum decisively summoned the Yatsufusa dolls. She deliberately avoided summoning the superclass danger beast, Death Tagul. With so many allies nearby and their base situated within the imperial capital, its sheer destructive power could easily result in collateral damage to civilians. However, the 5 humanoid dolls alone were more than enough to give the masked man a serious problem. Koro, Berserker. At that moment, Suri shouted and activated Hecadonkai's secret technique without hesitation. She knew that using this ability would leave Koro bedridden for months, but to relieve her master's burden, it was a price she was more than willing to pay. Koro's already massive form expanded even further, his muscles swelling to monstrous proportions. His face twisted into a fearsome, beastly expression. In this berserk state, all of Koro's abilities doubled in power. The attacks from the flying danger beasts barely fazed him. Even as wounds covered his body, they healed almost instantly. With a single effortless leap, Koro soared dozens of meters into the air, grabbing 2 of the flying creatures in his massive hands before slamming them straight into the ground. He followed up with several devastating punches, reducing them to nothing but pulverized remains. My sweet babies! The plump woman shrieked in anguish, her face contorted with grief. But she didn't dare to rush forward, otherwise, she'd be the next one smashed into pulp by Koro. At that moment, however, a chill ran down her spine. A real assassin never ignores their blind spot. A cold voice rang out behind her. Before she could even turn around, a powerful gust swept past her, generated by the swing of Blaine's Gunbyakuwa. In the next instant, her body was split in 2. Her head flew through the air, embedding itself into a wall 10 meters away, while her body collapsed, rolling over twice before going still. Ding. The host has slain a Tegu user and earned 40 system points. Blaine couldn't help but feel that the system reward was a bit underwhelming. This woman had been far too weak. A Tegu's power was formidable, but its true potential depended on the strength of its wielder. Take Asdith, for example. She continuously developed new abilities with Demon's Extract while also mastering top-tier combat techniques. In contrast, this woman had no real combat skills, relying entirely on a Tegu that simply tamed flying danger beasts. With 2 of the 3 Tegu users already dead, the last one was barely holding on. Seeing the tide of battle turn against them, The 3 remaining Shin users panicked. Outnumbered and stripped of their fighting spirit, they stood no chance against the elite warriors of the Imperial Assassination Unit. Within moments, all 3 were eliminated. Blaine, eager to claim the kill, focused Kamui's spatial distortion ability from his left eye directly onto the masked man's neck. Under relentless attacks from the Yotsufusa dolls, the masked man was rapidly losing ground. It was only a matter of time before Kurum finished him off. His trap-based abilities were also useless against her, thanks to the corpse-style Natala, which was specifically tasked with protecting her. Already overwhelmed, the masked man failed to notice the space around his neck warping at an alarming rate. In an instant, his neck twisted unnaturally, snapping cleanly. His head hit the ground with a dull thud. What happened? His final thought was one of utter confusion. He hadn't even realized how he died. Ding. The host has slain a Tegu user and earned 45 system points, with the system notification confirming his kill. Blaine smirked. Kurum, on the other hand, was momentarily stunned. Her opponent had just dropped dead out of nowhere. Turning to scan the battlefield, she realized that every enemy had already been wiped out. The scene near Koro was especially spectacular, the ground littered with the mangled corpses of flying danger beasts, all slaughtered mercilessly in his berserk rampage. And miraculously, none of their own seemed to be injured. But what Kurum cared about the most was Commander Blaine. When she looked over, she saw him walking toward her. "It's over," Blaine said, reaching out to gently brush some dust off her clothes. As for his little stunt of stealing the last kill, he didn't say a word about it. Of course, even if he had, Kurum likely wouldn't have cared after all. It wasn't as if there was actual experience to be gained from it. She gave a small smile. But her expression quickly turned serious in a way that made her look a bit adorably clueless. Then, without warning, she reached out and tried to pull down Blaine's pants. Her movements were so fast that he barely had time to react. But in the end, his reflexes were still sharper. He immediately grabbed her wrists. "What are you doing?" "I need to check if you're injured," Kurum replied, completely serious. "I'm not hurt." "Isn't that obvious?" Blaine said flatly. Even his clothes were still perfectly intact. "A comrade of mine once seemed fine after a battle but later collapsed from an unseen injury. I don't want the same thing happening to you." Kurum's tone was earnest as she explained. Seeing her concern, Blaine's expression softened into a smile. "Don't worry. I'm perfectly fine." "That's a relief." Kurum's face lit up with joy, and before she could stop herself, she threw her arms around him. This time, Blaine didn't dodge or resist. Chapter 75, Kurum's little thoughts held tightly by Kurum. Blaine could feel the softness of her delicate body and catch the faint, lingering fragrance on her. It was just the subtle scent left behind by the petals from her bath, nothing artificial or overpowering. But it smelled nice, natural and pleasant. Though Kurum acted on impulse, her mind remained clear. She knew exactly how bold this was, especially in front of everyone. Yet, she didn't feel embarrassed. Her personality had always allowed her to express her emotions directly, and she was well aware of her feelings for Commander Blaine. Even so, openly confessing was beyond her. Taking it slow like this was fine, she even enjoyed it. Surely, Commander Blaine would understand her feelings now, right? Unfortunately, things weren't as simple as Kurum imagined. Blaine didn't think too deeply about it. Just as he had remained steady even when Asdith had made her intentions obvious, he wasn't about to assume anything now, especially when Kurum's actions were even more subtle. He simply chalked it up to her being overwhelmed by the situation, assuming she calmed down soon enough. "To be honest, I feel like I should apologize. I didn't expect to make you worry so much." Blaine spoke with a touch of guilt, gently patting Kurum's head. Kurum, unaware of the misunderstanding, assumed he had understood her feelings. But in reality. Meanwhile, the members of the assassination unit, who had just finished inspecting the enemy corpses, turned around to see Kurum clinging to Commander Blaine. Some faces turned slightly red, some were surprised by Kurum's boldness, while others silently cheered her on. Overall, though, no one seemed too shocked. After all, they had long since noticed Kurum's unusual attachment to Commander Blaine. Wow, little Kurum is amazing. She can be so straightforward with Commander Blaine. If it were me, I'd never have the guts to just hug him like that. Well, Commander Blaine is so gentle he wouldn't get mad even if someone hugged him. That's only because it's cute little Kurum. If one of us big guys tried it, I'd love to see how Commander Blaine reacts. The group whispered among themselves, their light-hearted chatter making it seem as if nothing had happened, a stark contrast to the battlefield littered with corpses. Only Sarah stood apart, feeling something different. Watching the scene unfold before her, she felt an inexplicable discomfort just like last time. Except this time, the feeling was even stronger. Holding Koro, who had just finished his berserker state, she murmured to herself, Koro, what's wrong with me? Could I be coming down with some strange illness? But Koro, now weak and drained, had no strength to respond. Not that he could speak even if he wanted to. The more she thought about it, the harder it was to ignore. Once might have been a coincidence, but this was the second time. She couldn't just brush it off anymore. So decided she needed to get to the bottom of this. And deep down, she already knew where to start both times. The cause had been the same, her master and Kurum. Master, Kurum, why do I suddenly feel unwell? It's this tightness in my chest. I'm a little scared. Could I have some kind of strange illness? Sarah asked Blaine and Kurum directly, her usual bluntness on full display. Her extreme innocence and naivety made her easily misled, which was also why she was so easily swayed by others. Hearing Sarah's words, Kurum's expression visibly stiffened. Blaine, too, was puzzled. Don't scare yourself. But it's best to get checked out when you have time. It's probably nothing serious. Kurum's face turned a little strange at their difficult-to-comment-on conversation. She had already figured it out. This was obviously because Commander Sarah liked Commander Blaine, which explained her reaction. And considering how close they always seemed, it only reinforced her suspicion. But it was also clear that Commander Sarah didn't understand her own feelings. Could it be that she didn't even know what liking someone meant? That level of innocence felt almost unfair. Girls like that might be even more popular with boys. Kurum hesitated, torn about whether to tell Sarah the truth. If she did, Sarah would definitely realize her feelings and start competing with her for Commander Blaine. That wouldn't benefit Kurum at all. By now, she had already started seeing Sarah as a rival. And helping a rival defeat her? That made no sense. So, in the end, she decided not to say anything. Sorry, Commander Sarah. I really can't help you with this. Of course, Kurum couldn't say it out loud, that would be too suspicious. Instead, she could only apologize silently in her heart. At that moment, she suddenly realized she had been holding on to Blaine for quite a while. That wasn't good. Without hesitation, she let go. A moment later, Sarah suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Huh? That discomfort is completely gone. It was probably just psychological," Blaine said. "Still, just to be safe, you should get checked later." Kurum kept her mouth shut, feeling even more guilty inside. Commander Sarah was so pure that Kurum almost wanted to tell her the truth. But she couldn't. And so, the matter ended in an unclear and unresolved way. In the end, neither Blaine nor Sarah figured anything out. Only Kurum understood everything. "Commander Blaine, what should we do now? Lord Skiyu will be furious when he finds out we killed them." With that, they returned to the topic at hand. Kelly and the others looked uneasy. Many had already resigned themselves to the possibility of being executed by the Empire. "Even now, you still call that man Lord Skiyu?" Blaine said bluntly. "You've all seen the Empire's corruption firsthand. The darkness we live in today exists because of the greed and tyranny of people like Honest and Skiyu. If we keep obeying them, we'll only help destroy the Empire further. That's why we need to sever ties with them and create a new organization, one with our own code of conduct. We can't just keep submitting, waiting to be used and discarded." Blaine felt that the time had come. The members of the assassination unit had already dared to defy Skiyu's men, proof that they were ready. "But if we do this, wouldn't it be betrayal?" Before Kelly and the others could finish speaking, Blaine cut them off. "Wrong. We are going to change the Empire's corruption from within and guide it toward a better future. That's not betrayal, it's the highest form of loyalty. The organization I will establish is called Akatsuki, meaning dawn. We will bring an end to the Empire's darkness and war. We will bring light and hope. Will you follow me?" Chapter 76, The Establishment of the Akatsuki Organization. I do. Me too. As long as the commander doesn't mind that I'm not very strong. Commander Blaine is right. Loyalty isn't just about blind obedience. After carefully considering Blaine's words, Kelly and the others finally broke free from their dead-end thinking. They had already seen the dark side of the Empire with their own eyes. Once or twice, they might have dismissed it as a coincidence, but they had witnessed far too many instances. And these atrocities had nothing to do with the rebels, it was the Empire's own officials who brutally oppressed the lower class. Compared to those corrupt and tyrannical officials, they would much rather follow Blaine. Changing the Empire from within was fundamentally different from what the Revolutionary Army aimed for. The rebels wanted to overthrow the Empire entirely, something they found difficult to accept. Then it's decided. "Kurum, what about you? What do you want to do?" Blaine turned his head to ask Kurum. Kurum smiled slightly. "Of course, I'm willing. As long as I can stay with Commander Blaine." Her straightforward response made several people gasp softly. Kurum really knew what she was doing, there was no need for anyone to tease her about it. "Alright, collect the Tigas and Shingas from those guys. Then check if anyone among us is compatible with them." Blaine instructed. When he killed the 3 Tegu users, he had been careful not to damage the Tegus. Even in the life-and-death struggle between the Imperial Army and the Revolutionary Army, both sides deliberately avoided destroying Tegus during battle. They were too valuable and useful. Not to mention Tegus, even the Shingus from the 3 Shin users had been carefully preserved by Kelly and the others. Having more Tegu users and Shin users would be a huge advantage for the Akatsuki organization they were about to form. Understood. Since they had already decided to follow Blaine in establishing a new group, they naturally understood how important it was to strengthen their ranks with more Tegu and Shin users. Later, pack up your things. We can't stay in this base any longer. We'll find a hidden place outside the Imperial capital to set up a new base, one completely free from Skiyuu's control. Blaine continued. He already had a rough plan. They would use the lair of the superclass danger beast, Death Tagul, as their base, the Ecchi Cave. It was a well-known danger zone, but no one knew that Death Tagul had already been killed by him. Now, the Ecchi Cave were actually one of the safest places, aside from the occasional danger beast lurking nearby. As long as they weren't facing a superclass danger beast, there wouldn't be much of a threat. Alright, but there's one problem. What about our supply of drugs? Kelly and the others immediately thought of this issue. Without the drugs, their abilities would decline significantly, and they would suffer unbearable withdrawal symptoms. That's easy. We'll take the experimenters with us. They're only working for a paycheck, just offer them a higher salary than before. Blaine said casually. The real headache wasn't the researchers but the drugs themselves. The assassination unit had been on long-term drug regimens, leading to irreversible side effects. The withdrawal symptoms were so severe that quitting was impossible. Blaine's solution was to gradually reduce their drug intake. While this would weaken them somewhat, it would at least mitigate the side effects. Otherwise, according to the researchers, if they continued at the original dosage, the entire unit wouldn't survive beyond 5 years. They would age prematurely and die. Now, Blaine would only allow them to use substances with trace amounts of the drug to stave off withdrawal, similar to what Kurum did. It was just enough to prevent severe reactions. As for combat, he absolutely wouldn't let them go back to taking those highly concentrated white pills like before. They simply disposed of the bodies of those sent by Skiyuu, acting as if nothing had happened. They had no intention of drawing attention to themselves. It was better to wait until the Akatsuki organization was fully established and settled before making any moves. When Blaine offered the lab technicians a generous salary, nearly all of them agreed to go with him. Mainly because they didn't have much of a choice. Of course, Blaine didn't force or threaten them. It was just that once Blaine led Kurum and the others in breaking away from the Imperial assassination unit, the unit would automatically disband, leaving the technicians unemployed. Finding another job as good as this in the Imperial capital wouldn't be easy. Besides, the salary Blaine offered them was even higher than before. As for money, Blaine had no shortage of it. Hunting countless danger beasts had already made him rich. There were still a few lab personnel who were reluctant to leave, mostly because they feared for their lives. After all, defecting from the Imperial assassination unit alongside Blaine was a dangerous move. But what they feared even more was being silenced. Now that they knew too much, they couldn't shake the feeling that refusing would get them killed. In reality, Blaine had no intention of silencing anyone. However, given the Empire's ruthless nature, it was understandable why they thought that getting silenced for knowing too much was just the norm. Let's all try these Tegus and Shingus. Whoever is most compatible with one will be the one to use it. With that, Kurum placed the 3 Tegus and 3 Shingus on the table. One by one, the others stepped forward to test them out. Kurum and Sung, already possessing Tegus, didn't need to participate. In the end, only one girl showed strong compatibility with the horn-shaped Tegu. For the other 2 Tegus, the best candidates had only average compatibility. They could use them, but not to their full potential. Even so, a Tegu, even one not used at full power, was still far superior to a Shingu, making it more than sufficient. As for the Shingus, they didn't have strict compatibility requirements, so they were simply given to whoever handled them best. The preparations are nearly complete. Next, we head straight to the Ecchi Cave. That will be our new base. Blaine announced to the group. Although the Ecchi Cave were quite a distance from the Imperial capital, the horn-shaped Tegu had the ability to summon flying danger beasts, significantly reducing their travel time. Since the deaths of the masked man and his subordinates had yet to be reported, the Empire's guards wouldn't try to stop them as they left. At that moment, Blaine turned his attention to the system shop. He was about to redeem the Red Cloud Robe, the symbol of the Akatsuki organization. Since the organization was named Akatsuki, the Red Cloud Robe was a must. Chapter 77, Chelsea joins Night Raid base. As Blaine returned to the Imperial capital, Shiel and Mine also arrived back at the base. We just ran into Blaine while hunting a danger beast. Mine immediately reported upon their return. You were training nearby, weren't you? How did you end up running into Blaine there? Najunda asked, surprised. Could he have discovered our base? Did he say anything to you? No, he probably doesn't know our base is here. He looked like he was hunting danger beasts as well. Seems like we just ran into each other by accident. Mine replied. He didn't say anything to us, nor did he try to fight. She laughed. I did tell him outright that we wanted to recruit him, but I was too hasty and didn't express myself well. So he turned me down. She looked regretful. That's not Shield's fault, it's that guy's loss for not appreciating the offer. Mine said immediately. That kid, Blaine, really doesn't know how to count his blessings, turning down our sweet and beautiful Shield. Leon teased. Don't make it sound like Shield just confessed to him. Mine retorted, sounding a little annoyed. Shield, however, remained indifferent, seemingly oblivious to that kind of thing. It's not surprising he didn't accept right away. We had to go through a lot of trouble for Akam too. Lubbock pointed out. Strictly speaking, recruiting Akam had come at a steep price. Most of the assassin group Orberg had been wiped out, with Chelsea as the sole survivor. If not for the efforts of Orberg, especially its leader, Mraid, they wouldn't have been able to win Akam over so easily. It was Mraid who had shown Akam the countless dark sides of the Empire. Are you talking about Mraid? Akam suddenly recalled the woman. She had been an odd one, but without her, Akam might never have realized that her work for the Empire's assassination unit had been misguided. But in the end, Akam had killed Mraid with her own hands. At the time, she hadn't yet awakened to the truth. If she had, she never would have slain the one person who could have been considered her benefactor. No. I was just giving an example. Lubbock quickly realized he had messed up and tried to backtrack. What nonsense. Leon didn't hesitate to land a punch on him, making Lubbock yelp in exaggerated pain. Of course, he was just acting. It didn't actually hurt that much. It's okay. It was my mistake in the first place, you don't have to be so concerned about my feelings. Akam said. Anyway, what was Blaine's attitude? Did he reject outright, or was there any room for negotiation? Najunda steered the conversation back on track. He was polite about it, but his rejection was pretty firm. Shield replied. Oh, right. Shield also arranged to meet him again in 3 days, and he agreed. Mine added, then reassured Shield, so you don't need to blame yourself. If anything, you've given us an even better opportunity, haven't you? A smile returned to Shield's face. Though in her mind, it was because everyone was so kind that they never blamed her in the first place. After getting more details from Shield and Mine, Najunda quickly grasped the situation. In that case, we'll all wait for Blaine at the spot. Shield agreed on with him. By the way, the Revolutionary Army has sent someone who will be arriving soon. Not only will she bring us detailed intel on Blaine, but she'll also be joining Night Raid as our newest member. Najunda informed the group. Oh. We're getting a new teammate already? Leon said excitedly. A new ally was always a welcome addition. Really? Is it a guy or a girl? It'd be great if it's a cute girl. Lubbock said, visibly eager. You really only ever think about pretty girls. Mine shot him a glare. You'll find out when they arrive. Najunda teased, keeping it a mystery. I hope it's a guy. With only 2 men in Night Raid, it feels a bit unbalanced. Bullet suddenly chimed in, flashing a gleaming white smile. With that healthy grin and those words, it was easy to misunderstand his meaning. No, let's go with a girl instead. Lubbock protested firmly. So, Akam, would you prefer our new teammate to be a guy or a girl? Leon leaned in, asking with curiosity. It doesn't really matter. Whether they're male or female, they'll be a comrade who shares our cause. Akam answered flatly. Ha. Should have figured you'd say that. Leon chuckled, a little exasperated. Akam was so serious that teasing her was almost impossible. Akam tilted her head slightly, as if a question mark had appeared above her head, clearly not understanding what Leon was getting at. You're at the age where you should be interested in romance, right? Have you really never met a guy who makes your heart skip a beat? Leon asked more directly. No, now's not the time to think about things like that. Akam said firmly, shaking her head. Until she completed her mission, she wouldn't even consider such things. Besides, to her, Kurum would always be the most important person. I knew you'd say that. But honestly, falling in love doesn't have to interfere with your mission. If you ever meet someone you truly like, not even your mission will be able to stop you. Leon patted Akam on the shoulder with a grin. Maybe. Akam didn't take Leon's words seriously. While the Night Raid members were enjoying their laughter and banter, Chelsea was on her way to their base, riding a Tropa danger beast. The creature she rode was a special class danger beast tamed by the Revolutionary Army called Air Manta. It looked almost identical to a manta ray from the ocean, except it was many times larger, capable of carrying multiple people at once, and, most notably, could fly. Being a special class danger beast, its flying speed was naturally incredible. Chelsea wouldn't need much time to reach her destination. She held a lollipop in her mouth, a faint smile on her face. She was looking forward to meeting her new companions. And that innocent and kind-hearted guy. He would likely become one of them as well. At that moment, Blaine's face surfaced in Chelsea's mind. Chapter 78, Red Cloud Robe. At this moment, Chelsea had already met everyone in Night Raid. This is our new companion starting today. Her name is Chelsea. I hope you all get along with her. Najunda introduced Chelsea to the others. It was clear that Najunda already knew Chelsea, but the rest of Night Raid didn't. Chelsea smiled warmly, giving off a friendly impression. Even when facing Akam, her former enemy, she showed no signs of hostility. Looks like the new girl should be easy to get along with. Mine's first impression of Chelsea was quite positive. But that opinion probably wouldn't last long. Oh, what a beautiful girl! Lubbock exclaimed as he took in Chelsea's appearance. Well? Are you already itching to make a move, Lubbock? Leon teased him in a hushed tone. Of course not. I already have someone I like. Lubbock muttered back. Huh? You already have a crush on someone? Hearing this, Leon's curiosity was immediately piqued. Who is it? That's a secret. I can't tell you. Lubbock refused to answer. Come on, just whisper it to me. I won't tell anyone. Leon nudged Lubbock with her elbow. Akam? Mine? She'll? The girls in Night Raid are all pretty cute. The only one she didn't mention was the boss because, well, Najunda had a more masculine look and demeanor. Besides, after being around Lubbock for so long, Leon knew that while he could be a bit of a pervert, he was always serious when it came to Najunda. No comment. It was clear Lubbock didn't trust Leon one bit. If she let it slip and the girl he actually had feelings for found out, he'd be mortified. Alright, so it's a secret crush, huh? Well, good luck with that. Leon had already figured out that Lubbock was keeping quiet because he was too embarrassed to admit who he liked. The others, however, weren't paying attention to their whispered conversation. Chelsea had already started reporting information about Blaine to Najunda. Just like she had back at the Revolutionary Army base, Chelsea recounted everything that had happened at the assassination unit's base except for the things she couldn't reveal. In that case, Blaine is even more suitable than I originally thought. Najunda said, slightly surprised. Based on Chelsea's description, Blaine was even more of a pacifist than she had imagined. We can see hints of that in how he's changed the Imperial Assassination Unit. During his time in charge, they haven't clashed with Night Raid or even the entire Revolutionary Army. Even in the 2 encounters we've had, there was no hostility. Najunda speculated, it must be intentional. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, the Imperial Assassination Unit would be targeting us at any time. That guy's attitude isn't great, but he really hasn't done anything to hurt us. Mine admitted. But when Shield tried to recruit him today, he turned her down. Najunda added thoughtfully. I wonder if he's hesitating over something. We'll have to wait until our next meeting to find out. Huh? He already refused? Chelsea was a little surprised. From what she knew about Blaine, he wouldn't reject an offer unless he had serious concerns. And she could think of at least one thing he might be worried about: the people in the assassination unit. Given Blaine's personality, he likely valued them deeply. If he abandoned them to join the Revolutionary Army, the Empire would surely punish them harshly. Yeah, but he didn't give us a reason. Shill said. I think I know why. He probably can't bear to leave the assassination unit behind. Chelsea guessed. If that's the case, then we need to figure out how to address that concern and convince him. Najunda said. Fortunately, thanks to Shield's agreement with Blaine, we'll get a proper chance to talk to him in 3 days. 3 days, huh? Chelsea nodded slowly at those words, a sly smile creeping onto her lips, as if she had already thought up a fun little prank. What's up, Chelsea? You look like you're enjoying yourself. Najunda asked curiously, noticing her expression. Chelsea chuckled. Oh, it's nothing. I'm just looking forward to surprising that guy. I can't wait to see how he reacts. Meanwhile, Blaine and his group were en route to the Ecchi cavern. The flying danger beasts carrying them had been summoned by a horn-shaped tegu known as Sky Horn. This tegu granted its user the ability to raise and tame flying danger beasts. It could directly tame any flying danger beast below the superclass level but had no effect on land-based ones. However, the tegu had its limits. For example, it could only control up to 10 special class danger beasts at a time. If the user wanted to tame a new one, they would have to release an existing one to make room. Its secret skill, Sacrifice, allowed the user to permanently bind up to 2 flying superclass danger beasts at the cost of their own lifespan. Every time a bound superclass danger beast was summoned, the user's life force would gradually be drained. The girl best suited for this Tegu had inherited it from its previous owner, an obese woman who had left behind a handful of danger beasts. Only one special class and 4 class 1 danger beasts remained, the rest had been killed by Koro. At that moment, Blaine was browsing the system shop, exchanging his accumulated points. System points, 139, ding. The host has redeemed 24 red cloud robe, deducting 24 system points, ding. The host has redeemed Constitution plus 55. Deducting 55 system points, ding. The host has redeemed Strength plus 20. Deducting 20 system points, ding. The host has redeemed Agility plus 20. Deducting 20 system points, ding. The host has redeemed Ocular Power plus 20. Deducting 20 system points. After redeeming the red cloud robes, Blaine distributed his remaining points among his attributes. Strength, 70, Agility, 70, Constitution, 185, Ocular Power, plus 20. Before long, with the help of the flying danger beasts, Blaine and his group arrived at Ecchi Cavern one after another. They chose a moderately deep section of the cave as the initial base location. Blaine then retrieved all the red cloud robes from his system inventory and handed them out. These will be our Akatsuki uniforms from now on. Try them on and see if they fit. Chapter 79, Missouri Village. These red cloud robes were purchased by Blaine based on his general memory of everyone's body sizes, since he didn't know their exact measurements. So, they needed to try them on first. If any didn't fit, they could simply return and exchange them. The system was quite user-friendly in this regard. Ill-fitting items could be swapped out immediately. There were a total of 24 red cloud robes, including Blaine's own and Sir's. Thanks to Blaine's exceptional memory and the system's ability to tailor the robes based on his mental image of each person, most of them fit perfectly. Only 1 or 2 were slightly too big or small, but those were quickly exchanged for better-fitting ones. This looks way cooler than what we wore in the assassination unit before. Commander Blaine, did you design these yourself? Not surprising. Commander Blaine definitely has great taste. Now that the Akatsuki organization is officially established, we must not let Commander Blaine down. We have to see the organization's mission through to the end. Everyone seemed quite pleased with the red cloud robes. You don't need to call me Commander anymore. We're no longer part of the Imperial Assassination Unit. Just call me by my name, Blaine told them. But no one could bring themselves to do it. Addressing Blaine so casually felt too inappropriate. No. Kurum spoke up bluntly. I'm used to calling you Commander. And since you're now the leader of Akatsuki, there's nothing wrong with continuing to call you that, is there? I guess that's fine, Blaine said with a hint of helplessness. Now that they had settled on a location, the next step was to build the base. Blaine's plan was to recruit workers from nearby cities and villages, offering them a fair wage. By doing this under the guise of an imperial official, they could avoid most unnecessary trouble. As for security concerns, there was little risk of the base's location being exposed. The workers would be blindfolded during the journey and only have their blindfolds removed once they reached the depths of the cave. That way, they would know they were inside a cave but have no idea which one. Blaine still had a clear memory of the Empire's map in his mind. He knew exactly which cities and villages were near Ecchi Cavern, so finding the right places wouldn't be an issue. Of course, nearby was a relative term. A place like Ecchi Cavern was uninhabitable, so there were no settlements directly adjacent to it. Even the closest town was quite far away. Let's head to Missouri Village first, Blaine said, bringing Sir, Kurum, and the girl who wielded the Tegu sky horn along. The rest of you stay in the cave or explore the surroundings to get familiar with the area. Missouri Village was a small settlement. Given their situation, recruiting workers from a village was the most practical approach. Riding atop the special class danger beast, they quickly arrived near Missouri Village. As they descended, they immediately drew the attention of the villagers. That's a special class danger beast? Quick, report to the village chief, there's a special class danger beast approaching. Wait a second. There are people riding it? There really are. But they're dressed strangely. Could they be from another region? Most of the villagers were on high alert. If these people were foreigners and they had a special class danger beast with them, then the village could be in serious danger. Before long, the village chief, an elderly white-haired man, arrived at the village entrance, escorted by a group of well-armed militia. By then, Blaine and his group had already dismounted from the special class danger beast, which was resting nearby. Even so, the sight of the massive creature left the villagers shaken, keeping their distance in fear. May I ask who you are? The village chief looked at the mysterious figures dressed in matching attire, his expression serious. We are officials from the imperial capital, but we cannot disclose our true identities, Blaine stated, pulling out an old identification badge. This is proof of my previous position in the Imperial Capital Security Force. It just so happened that the village chief had visited the capital many years ago and had seen the unique insignia worn by the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force. This is indeed the Imperial Capital Security Force, and that is the captain's badge. The old village chief immediately believed Blaine's words. Since he had once been the captain of the Imperial Capital Security Force, his current rank was likely even higher than before. Still, the village chief was puzzled. Why would someone of such high status suddenly visit their impoverished village? Apart from tax collection, the Imperial Capital had never shown the slightest concern for them. We need to construct a fortress at a key location and urgently require a large workforce. Each worker will be paid 100 gold coins, with full payment upon completion. Blaine stated his purpose directly, making no mention of the Akatsuki organization. 100 gold coins? The old village chief was stunned, and the surrounding villagers were equally shocked. Gold coins, not silver or copper. 100 of them was an enormous sum. To put it into perspective, an ordinary family in the village could work and save diligently for half a lifetime and still not accumulate 100 gold coins. To them, this was an astronomical amount. My lord. Just tell us how many workers you need. We will absolutely provide enough to meet your expectations. The village chief spoke quickly, as if afraid Blaine might suddenly change his mind. The village's finances were already on the brink of collapse. With such a lucrative opportunity placed before them, there was no way they would let it slip away. Start with 100 workers. The demand will increase gradually over time. The first 100 will each receive 100 gold coins, while future workers will be paid based on hours worked. Blaine spoke calmly. Understood. We can gather 100 skilled workers for you right away. With that, the old village chief turned and hurried back into the village, moving so quickly he seemed 10 years younger, his cane now an unnecessary burden. Meanwhile, he instructed the villagers to bring Blaine and his group into the village and treat them well. Upon entering, they could see that most of the buildings were old and worn down, though the village still had a sizable population. Blaine had already guessed the village was extremely poor based on the chief's reaction. It was clear they were desperate for money. And he just so happened to provide them with a much-needed financial boost. Of course, he wasn't giving them money for free. But after being exploited by the Empire for so long, these villagers saw him as exceptionally generous. In reality, the wages he offered were only slightly above the standard rate. The key difference was that, without middlemen taking a cut, the workers would actually receive fair compensation for their labor. Blaine and his group were taken to a room where a variety of local snacks had been set out on the table. The moment Kurum saw them, she couldn't resist. She immediately started eating. A little while later, the old village chief returned, bringing 3 young villagers with him. These 3 are the best young warriors in our village. They are strong and highly capable. He then turned to the 3 youths and said, Tatsumi, Sayo, I also show this gentleman what you can do. Chapter 80, Tatsumi. There were 2 boys and 1 girl. The brown-haired boy with a stray lock of hair sticking up was named Tatsumi. The dark-haired boy with a white cloth tied around his head was named Ayasu. Lastly, there was a cute girl with long, silky black hair named Sayo. The 3 of them were not only the most outstanding young warriors in Mizur village but also childhood friends who had grown up together. I understand, Grandpa Chief. Tatsumi, clearly a swordsman, gripped his long sword and dashed forward, slashing through the air. His speed and strength were impressive, far beyond that of an average person. Considering Tatsumi's young age, Blaine thought he had decent potential. Sayo and Ayasu were about to follow suit when Blaine spoke up. No need to go through all that trouble. I don't have high requirements for workers. Just being in good health and having basic construction knowledge is enough. For a rural village like this, that was practically no requirement at all. In the Empire, especially in struggling villages like this one, most people knew a little bit of everything. That won't be a problem. The rest of the workers are already prepared. The village chief responded immediately. Finding 100 suitable workers was easy. However, to leave a good impression on these powerful figures, they had carefully selected a group of physically stronger villagers first. That was why even Tatsumi, Sayo, and Ayasu had been included. Their real combat ability was enough to take down Class 1 danger beasts. Special Class danger beasts would be a challenge, but in a remote village like this, they were already among the strongest. Originally, the 3 had planned to leave for the Imperial capital in 2 days, carrying the hopes of their entire village as they joined the military, determined to carve out a future for themselves and eventually lift their village out of hardship. Although this sudden job under an Imperial official disrupted their plans, the high pay would provide immediate relief to their village's financial struggles. Besides, if they performed well in front of this high-ranking official who, according to the village chief, held a significant position, they might even be recommended for early enlistment. That would make climbing the ranks in the army much easier. We'll give it our all. Tatsumi beamed with youthful energy, filled with anticipation for his future. Naive as he was, he had no idea what the imperial capital was really like. Tatsumi's really fired up. We can't slack off either, Ayase said with a grin. Sayo smiled as well, but her attention was soon drawn to a black-haired, black-eyed girl sitting nearby. She watched as the girl quietly nibbled on the snacks laid out on the table. Sayo couldn't help but feel curious. The girl looked to be around the same age as her, and the adults accompanying her had already made a name for themselves in the imperial capital despite their youth. If she, Tatsumi, and Ayase could achieve the same, they could surely bring hope to their village. At that moment, Kurum also noticed Sayo staring at her. After a brief pause, seeing that Sayo still hadn't looked away, Kurum wordlessly pulled all the snacks on the table toward herself and, with a serious expression, stated, "These are mine." Then, as if realizing something, she reconsidered. After all, the snacks weren't actually hers. "But I suppose I could share a little with you." Sayo blinked in surprise. This was nothing like the imposing imperial officials she had imagined. "And no, I wasn't looking at the snacks. I was just thinking how young and amazing you all are," Sayo hurriedly explained, snapping out of her daze. "With your talents, you'd stand out even in the imperial capital, though it's not as wonderful a place as you might think," Blaine remarked. "Really?" Tatsumi's excitement grew. Blaine's words only reinforced his confidence. Now, more than ever, he was eager to go to the imperial capital, convinced that as long as he worked hard, he could make a name for himself. In reality, if Tatsumi hadn't been swindled out of all his money by Leon at the start of the original story, and if he had successfully enlisted in the army, he likely would have caught the attention of Great General Do and been personally trained. After all, more than his current strength, Tatsumi's greatest asset was his potential for growth, something even Do had acknowledged. Of course, once Tatsumi learned the truth about Sayo and Ayase's deaths, he would probably still join night trade and take the path toward overthrowing the empire. Soon, 100 workers had gathered at the village entrance. "Since the construction of this fortress is highly classified, you will all remain blindfolded until we reach the worksite," Blaine announced to everyone. "So when you're riding on the danger beasts later, make sure to hold on tight." "Wait. Does that mean we're actually going to ride on the backs of danger beasts? It must be pretty far. I've heard that flying danger beasts are the fastest way to travel. Honestly, this is kind of scary. I've never ridden a danger beast before." Some were visibly nervous about the idea, while others were excited at the rare opportunity to experience riding one. "Don't worry, all of our danger beasts have been fully tamed, they won't harm you," Blaine reassured the group. With that, all the workers, including Tatsumi and his friends, were blindfolded. Once they were securely seated on the backs of the danger beasts, the journey back to Seiga Cavern began. The flight didn't take long. Once they had arrived deep within Seiga Cavern, Blaine finally allowed the workers to remove their blindfolds. As they opened their eyes and took in their surroundings, they could only tell that they were in some kind of cave. But none of them dwelled on it. They were here to work and earn money, not to ask unnecessary and potentially dangerous questions. Right from the start, they showed great enthusiasm. In this world, those who had undergone proper training tended to have strong physiques, making their work efficiency naturally high. The first step was to construct a small base, which, with such hardworking and sturdy laborers, wouldn't take more than a few days. The expansion could come later. With a little supervision, the workers would take care of everything. There was no need for Blaine to involve himself too much. He had his own matters to attend to, specifically his meeting with the leader of night trade. After all, he hadn't forgotten his promise to Shield. Chapter 81, Chelsea's assault. On the day Blaine led Kurum and the others out of the Empire's assassination unit, Skiyu immediately sensed something was wrong. His men should have returned by now. He quickly sent people to investigate, only to find the entire base of the assassination unit completely deserted. Not a single person remained, not even corpses. Even the Tigas and Shingas were gone. Skiyu refused to believe his men had simply vanished into thin air. After digging into the city gate records, he confirmed that Blaine had indeed left with the members of the assassination unit and never returned. He had even taken the lab personnel with him. It was almost certain his subordinates had been killed, and the Tigas had been seized. Damn it! Fury overtook Skiyu as he crushed the teacup in his hand. His subordinates dared not utter a word, fearful of being dragged into his wrath. Only after a long pause did Skiyu finally regain his composure. "No one is to spread a word of this without my permission. Otherwise..." His voice carried a menacing threat as he swept his gaze over everyone present. If this got out, he would be nothing more than a laughingstock in the imperial court. He had founded the Empire's assassination unit himself, yet now, it had been completely wiped out. Until he took down that brat Blaine and restored his reputation, no one could know about his disgrace. Right now, The most pressing matter was finding out Blaine's whereabouts. The appointed day arrived. Blaine prepared to return to that familiar mountain forest. He hadn't told Akam, Kurum, or the others where he was headed. No need to make them worry. Using Kamui space, he teleported himself once again to the agreed-upon location. The entire night raid was already waiting for him. From a distance, Blaine could make out several familiar figures. Among them, he recognized Akame, Mine, and Shiel. The rest were unfamiliar to him. However, the tall, muscular young man with the distinct crew cut was easy to identify. He was likely the previous wielder of that armored Daegu. "He is here." Leon spotted Blaine and called out. Seeing him arrive, Shiel's face brightened with a hint of joy. "So he really showed up. At least he didn't stand us up," Lubbock remarked, crossing his arms behind his head. "If he dared to stand Shiel up, I wouldn't have let him off so easily." Mine huffed. Blaine came to a stop in front of them, slightly surprised. "You all came here just for me?" He had expected to meet only Shiel, Mine, and maybe the leader of Night Raid. He hadn't anticipated the entire group to show up. "Yes, so you should be grateful. Not everyone gets this kind of treatment." Mine crossed her arms, her tone far from polite. "Of course. Given your status and abilities, it's only natural that we treat you this way." Najenda, on the other hand, had a much friendlier demeanor as she spoke to Blaine. "My name is Najenda. I'm the leader of Night Raid, and Akam is the acting captain. We also have 6 other members." She gave Blaine a brief introduction. Najenda. Blaine's attention was immediately drawn to her name. Wasn't that the name of the former Imperial General? Asdith had mentioned her before. Looking at the woman in front of him, an eye patch covering her right eye and a mechanical arm replacing her right hand, he was almost certain. This had to be the one Asdith had crippled. "You were a general of the Empire?" Blaine asked. "That's right, but I'm with the Revolutionary Army now." Najenda nodded. "From what I know, you came to the capital with Asdith." "I used to be her colleague. I've heard her mention you before." Blaine replied casually. "Oh? She actually talked to you about that? What exactly did she say?" Najenda's curiosity was piqued. In her experience, Asdith wasn't the type to engage in idle conversation. She just mentioned that the Empire had a general around her age and brought up your name. "But that was a while ago before you had." Blaine trailed off. "I see. So even that woman can say something nice," Najenda said with a hint of nostalgia. "By the way, besides you and the acting captain, didn't you say there were 6 others?" "I only see 5. Blaine suddenly noticed the discrepancy. "There's also Chelsea, but she's not with us right now. You'll see her soon, though. Let's talk as we walk." Najenda led the way as the group headed toward a wooden house, likely one of Night Raid's temporary hideouts. Outside the cabin was a large stone table, big enough for several people. "Let's sit here and have a proper talk." Najenda gestured for Blaine to take a seat. Just then, a small black cat emerged from the cabin and slowly walked toward Blaine. His pupils twitched slightly. Wasn't this the same little guy he had named Shady last time? He had long suspected that it was someone from the Revolutionary Army, so seeing it again wasn't all that surprising. It seemed this cat was the last member Najenda mentioned, hence its presence here. "Huh? Why is there a cat here?" Mine looked surprised. "So cute," Shiel murmured in admiration. Clearly, neither of them was familiar with Chelsea's ego ability. They hadn't realized that this black cat was likely Chelsea in disguise. "There shouldn't be any stray cats around here," Lubbock remarked, puzzled. With danger beasts everywhere, how did this little guy even survive? Probably been hiding in the cabin all this time. "Now that I think about it, we haven't been here in a while," Bullet speculated. Akam remained silent, staring blankly at the small black cat. At some point, a bit of drool had gathered at the corner of her mouth, almost as if she were tempted to eat it. Najenda, however, was the first to suspect that the cat was actually Chelsea. She knew Chelsea's ability well, but she had no idea what she was trying to do. Then, all of a sudden, the black cat pounced toward Blaine. Chelsea's sudden action only confused Najenda further. What was she up to? As it soared through the air, the cat suddenly transformed into a beautiful young woman. "Chelsea." Meow. She maintained her cat-like posture midair, heading straight for Blaine. At this rate, she was going to land right on top of him. Chapter 82, Heartless Man. Blaine calmly sidestepped, effortlessly avoiding the so-called ambush. A move like this didn't even require him to use intangibility. Chelsea missed her mark but landed gracefully, just like a cat. Getting up, she gazed at Blaine with a pout and complained, "Really now, why did you dodge?" "Why wouldn't I dodge?" Blaine countered. Even though Chelsea had spent a few days with him in her little black cat form, he had never let his guard down around her. Especially here, on Night Raid's turf, staying cautious was the smart move. You did such terrible things to me before, and now you don't want to take responsibility? Chelsea's voice carried a wounded tone. What? You actually did something to Chelsea? Mine gasped in shock. Oh? So something interesting happened in just a few days? Leon smirked, clearly intrigued. Damn, I'm so jealous. Lubbock muttered enviously. Negenda, however, remained silent. She knew Chelsea well enough to tell this was just one of her pranks. In fact, Chelsea had even mentioned wanting to give Blaine a surprise, which Negenda now suspected meant a series of elaborate tricks. Something terrible. Blaine was momentarily confused. Then it hit him, she was probably talking about the time he bathed her. Not only did you touch me all over, but you even groped me in my sleep. And now you're acting like nothing ever happened? You heartless man. Chelsea sounded even more distraught, playing the role so convincingly that, aside from Negenda, the rest of Nitrate actually believed her. Blaine could feel mine glaring at him in pure disdain. Leon looked like she was enjoying the show. Lubbock was seething with jealousy. Akam, Shield, Bullet, and Negenda, on the other hand, remained unfazed. You were still a little black cat back then. How was I supposed to know it was you? Blaine sighed in exasperation. Sure, he had figured out that the little black cat was actually a transformed human. But at the time, he had no way of knowing whether it was a man or a woman, let alone that it would turn out to be a beautiful girl. Her outfit stood out too, especially the over-ear headphones, which felt oddly out of place in this world setting. Honestly, Blaine was a little surprised. So this world had things like headphones, huh? The technology in this world was a complete mess. If someone tried to map it out like a tech tree, it would be total chaos. But now you know I'm actually a member of the Revolutionary Army. To be precise, I'm part of Nitrade now. Chelsea smiled. Let's reintroduce ourselves. My name is Chelsea. But if you still want to call me Shady, I won't mind. No thanks, let's just stick with Chelsea. Blaine said, feeling a bit awkward. You're not even a little surprised? That little black cat was actually a beautiful girl like me all along, Chelsea teased with a sultry tone. I definitely didn't see that coming. Blaine admitted. Chelsea gave him a meaningful smile, staring at his face for a long moment. His reaction was too calm, it felt like a waste. Alright, let's get back to business. I won't mess with you anymore. Chelsea said, ending the short charade. She took a seat next to Blaine, and once everyone was settled, Negenda spoke up. Shield should have already told you we want to recruit you into the Revolutionary Army. Negenda's tone was serious. We've been watching your actions, and it's clear that you're nothing like the corrupt and tyrannical officials. You're a righteous man with a conscience. But in the Imperial Court, the conscience faction has no real power. If this continues, the Empire will only spiral further into ruin. That's why we believe the Empire must be overthrown. You're not wrong about that, but I've heard that you've allied with foreign tribes, haven't you? Blaine asked slowly. The Revolutionary Army's cooperation with foreign tribes was no secret within the Empire. And in his view, that was a major issue. A civil war between the Empire and the Revolutionary Army was one thing. But involving foreign powers turned it into something else entirely. If both the Empire and the Revolutionary Army ended up exhausting each other, leaving an opening for foreign tribes to invade, wouldn't it be just like the fall of the Ming Dynasty? Yes, the Qing Dynasty did establish its place in history, but that didn't erase the brutal massacres of civilians during the transition. If the situation had any chance of heading in that direction, there was no way Blaine could support the Revolutionary Army. Yes, we've allied with the Western tribes. Our relations with the Northern and Southern tribes are also relatively good. Right now, the Empire's so-called strongest Asdith is locked in war with the Northern tribes, which works in our favor. Negenda admitted. Have you signed any agreements with them? Blaine pressed further. We have. Once we successfully overthrow the Empire, we'll return a portion of the Western territories to the Western tribes. That land originally belonged to them. Negenda explained honestly. Blaine fell silent. Even if those lands had once belonged to the Western tribes, history didn't work like that. Take the Han Dynasty, for example. During its early years, the Hexi corridor was controlled by the Zhengnu. But during Emperor Wu's reign, generals like Wei Qing and Hueco reclaimed it. Now imagine, after decades or even centuries, someone suggesting it should be returned to the Zhengnu. Who would accept that? The more Blaine studied the Empire's map, the more it reminded him of his homeland before he arrived in this world. The resemblance was uncanny. He could easily view the Empire as an ancient dynasty and the Western tribes as an equivalent of the Zhengnu. If the Empire truly fell, how much of its territory would foreign powers try to claim? Blaine's concerns likely stemmed from his ingrained perception of foreign tribes in ancient history. The most infamous example? The Five Barbarians Uprising, which nearly led to the complete extermination of the Han people. To Blaine, it was simple, and internal conflict should remain internal. Foreign nations had no place in it. The phrase "those who are not of our kind harbor different intentions" might sound extreme, but history had proven its validity time and again. And as it turned out, his concerns weren't unfounded. In the original timeline, if Asdith hadn't crushed the 400,000 strong northern army, the Empire's northern regions would have suffered the same fate as Asdith's own people had in the past. Not to mention how, during the war between the Imperial Army and the Revolutionary Army, the Western tribes took advantage of the chaos to invade. And historically, when foreign forces invaded, massacres were commonplace. Even after the Empire fell, things didn't end there. The northern and western tribes ended up forming an alliance. The irony was undeniable. Asdith had led the charge to cripple both of those foreign forces, single-handedly stopping their invasions. But with the Revolutionary Army taking over, the new empire pursued peace and even ceded land to those same tribes. So then, why did the northern and western tribes suddenly decide to form an alliance? The implications were interesting, to say the least. Chapter 83, Differences in Ideology. It's not like they formed an alliance for fun. This isn't some child's game. 9 times out of 10, the northern and western tribes joined forces with the intention of invading the empire. Even though the newly established empire remained strong and still controlled many Tegus, that alone wouldn't be enough to deter them. If Asdith hadn't crippled both the northern and western tribes before, would they really just sit back and watch the Revolutionary Army establish a new empire? Back in Asdith's time, these foreign tribes were the aggressors, launching invasions that she crushed in response. They were never the type to remain peaceful forever. Historically speaking, the land occupied by the empire was incredibly fertile, just like the Central Plains of ancient times. It was only natural that foreign powers would keep their eyes on it. Asdith had been slain by the very Revolutionary Army that founded the new empire. Yet, ironically, it was her past suppression of these foreign invaders that had allowed this so-called new empire to enjoy its current peace. "I understand," Blaine said. "Then forgive me for declining your offer. I've already established my own organization." He only stated one of the main reasons. The other, of course, was that he simply couldn't accept the Revolutionary Army allying with foreign tribes to attack its own nation. "You've already formed a new organization?" Najunda was visibly surprised. "That's a bit of a shame, but perhaps we can cooperate instead." She assumed that whatever organization Blaine had created must also be working against the Empire. "I doubt that will be possible," Blaine responded. "Our ideology is to change the Empire from within." He put it in a somewhat diplomatic way. He didn't outright say that he disagreed with their philosophy, but his stance was clear enough. "I see. We actually considered trying to change the Empire from within as well," Najunda admitted. "But we soon realized that it's simply impossible. Prime Minister Honest's influence in the court is too strong. Any attempt at reform is immediately crushed. Right now, the Conscience faction barely survives under Great General Do's protection, and even then, they can't accomplish anything." She let out a small sigh. "More importantly, a revolution can rally the people's support. Trying to reform the empire from within would make it difficult to connect with the masses." The Revolutionary Army had grown as powerful as it had precisely because it had won over the people's hearts. The common folk, with their limited perspectives, had long harbored resentment toward the empire. Their understanding of the situation was narrow. They weren't thinking about the bigger picture. Throughout history, countless peasant uprisings had run into similar problems. Most rebellions weren't meticulously planned political movements. They were driven by the simple desire to overthrow a cruel and oppressive regime. If the goal was to reform the empire rather than overthrow it entirely, it would be much harder to gain popular support. Of course, there would still be people in favor of reform, much like the late Qing dynasty's reformists. But their influence wouldn't be nearly enough to help Najunda and her allies take down Honest. In truth, even in the original story, the Revolutionary Army's primary goal had been to overthrow Honest's regime. The new empire's government still consisted of many of the same officials from the old empire. The only difference was that they had eliminated the corrupt ones. When you looked at it that way, the difference between the two approaches wasn't as drastic as it seemed. The only real distinction lay in their likelihood of success. Given how things had played out in the original timeline, attempting to reform the empire from within had been practically impossible. That left revolution as the only viable path forward. "I won't force you to think like me, but working together will be difficult. However, when it comes to overthrowing Honest's regime, I suppose we share the same goal." Blaine understood the Revolutionary Army's struggles. "That works for us. Our main objective is to take down Prime Minister Honest, and in that regard, we can cooperate," Najunda said. "But let me be clear, I don't want you to overthrow the entire empire," Blaine stated bluntly. "More precisely, I don't want you creating chaos within the Imperial Army, which could give foreign forces an opportunity to invade." "So that's what you're worried about?" But without the strength of those foreign forces, it would be nearly impossible for the Revolutionary Army to defeat the Empire. Najunda replied. She understood Blaine's concerns. After all, the Empire had suffered invasions from foreign tribes for centuries. However, there was no other way. If the Revolutionary Army wanted to win, they needed to rely on outside forces. Leave it to me. I have the confidence to overthrow Honest's regime, so there's no need for you to seek aid from the foreigners. Blaine said in a deep voice. The Akatsuki organization might still be weak, but his personal strength was on an entirely different level. And besides, there was Asdith. She had told him before if he could defeat her, he could do whatever he wanted. So why not make her submit to the Akatsuki organization? If Asdith, the regime's ultimate trump card, was out of the picture, then the rest of Honest's forces would collapse like a house of cards. If he didn't have the confidence to defeat Asdith in a one-on-one fight, then his Mangekyō Sharingan's Kamui abilities would be wasted. I always thought you were a bit strange, but now I see you're just full of yourself. And completely naive. Mine suddenly spoke up, unable to hold back. Being a half-blood of a Western foreigner and an imperial citizen, she had been bullied as a child because of her heritage. As a result, she was particularly sensitive to discussions about foreigners. Hearing Blaine talk about them in such a way naturally irritated her. And then he had the audacity to claim he could single-handedly overthrow Honest's regime? That only made her angrier. If one man could accomplish that, then what was the point of the Revolutionary Army's entire movement? Mine. Shill said worriedly, trying to calm her down. But mine wasn't backing down. Forget everything else. What about Asdith, the so-called strongest in the Empire? Can you really defeat her? I'm confident. And besides, how would I know unless I try? Blaine replied calmly. He understood why she was upset, so he didn't take offense. TCH. Arrogant fool. If it were really that easy, we wouldn't be in this situation. Mine scoffed, eyes filled with disdain. All right, mine, that's enough. Najunda interrupted before the argument could escalate further. Since you know Asdith, you should also understand how powerful she is. Based on my estimates, it would take at least 10 Tegu users and 50,000 elite soldiers just to have a chance at taking her down. Can your organization muster that kind of force? Mine huffed, turning her head away like an annoyed child refusing to acknowledge someone. I can handle it alone. Of course, you won't believe me now, so there's no point in discussing it further. I've made my stance clear. Blaine stated, ending the conversation before it turned into a pointless dispute. Najunda remained calm as she responded, whether it's true or not, if you can really defeat Asdith, then we're willing to follow your lead. Chapter 84, Chelsea's welcoming gift. Although Najunda thought the chances of Blaine defeating Asdith were slim, his confidence made it hard to completely rule out the possibility. Her top priority was taking down Prime Minister Honest. As long as that goal was achieved, she didn't mind whether it was through internal reform or outright revolution. All right. Blaine nodded slightly. He didn't want to antagonize Night Raid either. After all, once Honest's regime collapsed, a lot of positions would need to be filled. Many members of Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army were originally officials or military officers of the Empire, making them the most suitable candidates. Since Blaine and Najunda had already stated their positions, Mine had nothing more to say. Still, she couldn't shake her annoyance toward him. Seeing Mine sulking, Shiel reached out and patted her head in an attempt to comfort her. Don't touch my head. I'm not a kid. Mine grumbled. Shiel quickly withdrew his hand, flustered. Sorry. I didn't know you didn't like that. It's fine. No need to apologize. I'm just not used to it. Mine muttered, now feeling like she had to reassure Shiel instead. Even if we don't completely agree on ideals, we can still work together. For now, we all share the same enemy, Honest's regime. At that moment, Leon, who had been sitting on Blaine's other side, leaned in and whispered in his ear, besides, Night Raid has so many cute girls. Don't you have any thoughts about that? This is a great opportunity, you know. I'll pass. Blaine was speechless. Given what he'd just said, he was sure he had already annoyed most of Night Raid. The fact that Leon was still joking with him probably just came down to her personality. Blaine. That's your name, right? Suddenly, Akam addressed him. Blaine responded with a hint of confusion. I want to talk to you about Kurum. You've spent some time with her in the Imperial Assassination Unit, so you should know how she's doing. Akam said directly. She believes that fulfilling the Empire's missions and fighting for her comrades is her purpose in life. With that mindset, she's trapped in an endless cycle of battle, constantly suffering from the side effects of the drugs they force on her. That's why I want to save her to free her from that suffering. As her sister, it's the least I can do. I just hope you won't interfere with our duel to the death. I believe Kurum feels the same way. Akam rarely spoke so much at once, which showed just how much she cared about her sister. Blaine, however, looked at her in confusion. What are you even talking about? Kurum isn't part of the Imperial Assassination Unit anymore. There's no reason for you to fight her to the death. What? Kurum left the Imperial Assassination Unit? Akame's eyes widened in shock. She had spent days trying to convince Kurum to leave, but even as her closest sister, she hadn't been able to persuade her. Yet this boy named Blaine had succeeded? The revelation left her both stunned and a little unsettled. Yeah. Kurum and the entire assassination unit left the Empire with me. You could say the Imperial Assassination Unit doesn't even exist anymore. Blaine explained it simply. How? How did you get Kurum to go with you? Akame was particularly fixated on this and wanted to understand why. I put an end to the brainwashing sessions they were forced to undergo, weakened the Empire's influence over them, and shifted their ideology from within, all without directly violating their ingrained sense of loyalty to the Empire. That's pretty much it. Blaine said casually. It wasn't exactly a secret. I see. Akame now understood. However, another question quickly surfaced in her mind. By the way, what exactly is your relationship with Kurum? Are you her lover? She stared directly at Blaine, clearly eager to hear his answer. No wonder Akame is like this, she really cares about Kurum. Leon sighed. We've all heard that Kurum is nearly impossible to convince. Honestly, you're incredible for managing to take not just her, but the entire assassination unit with you. Najunda remarked, unable to hide her admiration. This was undoubtedly good news for them. The Empire's assassination unit had been completely turned around. What was once an enemy force had essentially become an ally. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Blaine's organization and Revolutionary Army had at least one thing in common: they both wanted to overthrow Honest's regime. At the very least, he wouldn't stand in their way when it came to eliminating Prime Minister Honest. No, Kurum and I aren't in that kind of relationship. Blaine said, dismissing Akame's assumption with ease. Since it wasn't true, his denial came naturally. I see. Thanks for clearing that up. Akame said, visibly relieved. She then continued, also, when do you think I'll be able to see Kurum? I'll ask her when I get back and let you know. Blaine replied. All right. Akame nodded, looking forward to reuniting with her sister. So, all the former members of the assassination unit are in your organization now. You must really care about them. Chelsea commented from beside him. I couldn't just abandon them. Blaine answered. For now, there's nothing urgent. If you're in a hurry, you can head back first. Najunda said. But if not, since you're already here, why not stay for lunch? I wouldn't want to impose. Blaine wasn't in a rush, but he also didn't want to trouble them. Why so polite? Don't you want to taste a beautiful girl's cooking? Akame's personally making lunch. Leon teased. Yeah, Akame's cooking is delicious. Bullet added, giving a thumbs up. Blaine had no reason to doubt that. When she was in the assassination unit, she had always been the one cooking for the elite team. Faced with their enthusiasm, he hesitated briefly before nodding. All right. Mine didn't voice any objections. Since Najunda had already come to an understanding with Blaine and their goal remained the same, to take down Honest, she had nothing more to say. With that settled, they prepared to eat at the stone table while Akame handled the cooking inside the cabin. Ingredients weren't a problem, there were plenty of danger beasts roaming around. As Akame and Sheil left to hunt, Chelsea, still seated next to Blaine, wasn't idle either. It's a shame you didn't join Night Raid, but at least we're not enemies anymore. Here, consider this an official welcoming gift. She took out a lollipop, still in its wrapper, and handed it to him. Blaine blinked in mild surprise. He hadn't expected Chelsea to offer him a lollipop. Seeing his reaction, Chelsea smirked and seized the chance to tease him. What's wrong? Or were you hoping for the one in my mouth instead? Chapter 85, The Scheming Chelsea. As she spoke, Chelsea took the lollipop from her mouth and casually offered it to Blaine, showing no embarrassment at all. It was as if even if Blaine actually chose the lollipop she had already eaten, Chelsea wouldn't mind in the slightest. That's unnecessary. Blaine knew full well that Chelsea was teasing him, so he naturally wouldn't let her have her way. Instead, he reached for the other lollipop in her hand, the one still wrapped, and took it calmly. Thanks. Chelsea, you and Blaine sure are close. Leon remarked, watching the exchange. Of course. He's taken care of me plenty of times before. Chelsea said, referring to the time when she had transformed into a black kitten and Blaine had looked after her in the assassination unit. Hearing this, Najunda thought it was a good thing for Night Raid to have someone on good terms with Blaine. Not long after, Akame and Sheil returned from hunting danger beasts. As Tegu users, they had no trouble taking down even special class danger beasts. Each of them dragged back an ingredient several times their own size. With the food gathered, Akame immediately headed inside the hut to cook. Sheil, however, didn't follow to help because when it came to daily tasks, she was hopelessly clumsy. If she tried cooking, there was a real chance she'd blow up the kitchen. In fact, before Akame took over night trade's meals, Sheil had been in charge, and the results were, well, let's just say they weren't great. Never underestimate how absent-minded she can be. Sheil was well aware of her own shortcomings, which was why she hesitated to take on certain tasks, afraid she might end up causing more trouble than helping. Kurum loves good food. She is a total foodie. And since Akame, as her older sister, happens to be great at cooking, they get along really well. Blaine mused. Two sisters who get along so well should never have to fight to the death. Fortunately, he was fairly certain he had already prevented that tragedy. Judging by Akame's reaction earlier, she no longer seemed intent on fighting Kurum to the bitter end. Actually, Akame's a foodie too. Leon corrected. She volunteered to be in charge of cooking just so she'd have a legitimate excuse to sneak extra bites. Is that so? Blaine wasn't surprised. Well, considering they're sisters, that does make sense. At that moment, Akame brought out large plates of meat dishes one after another. The meals were predominantly meat, with only a small amount of vegetables mixed in. It was obvious Akame really loved eating meat. As they started eating, Blaine remained polite, only picking at a few dishes as a gesture. But just then, Chelsea picked up a piece of meat, lightly blew on it to cool it down, and then held it up to Blaine's mouth. Ah, this. Blaine was momentarily taken aback by the sudden gesture. Don't be shy. You took care of me like this before, so of course I have to repay the favor. Chelsea said with a smile. Blaine suddenly recalled that he had indeed fed Chelsea back when she was in her black kitten form with a spoon. But that had only happened once or twice. After taking the bite, Blaine said, "All right, I can do it myself from here." No way. Just one bite isn't enough. Chelsea, however, wasn't planning to stop and continued having fun feeding Blaine. Blaine had no intention of letting himself be played with so easily, but before he could say anything, Mine, who was sitting next to Chelsea, seemed to have had enough. When you're showing off your affection, at least consider the feelings of others. Oh? My bad, I didn't notice a little shrimp sitting here. Chelsea said in an apologetic tone, but her words only made Mine furious. Who are you calling a shrimp? Mine snapped, her anger flaring. Isn't it true? But don't be mad, small things can be cute too, Chelsea teased, looking completely amused. Damn it. Mine's face turned red with rage, but she was completely outmatched by Chelsea's relentless teasing. At that moment, Blaine was once again reminded of just how devious Chelsea could be. Damn it, I wish I had two cute girls arguing over me too. Lubbock sighed dramatically as he ate, practically grinding his molars in envy. Lubbock, if you come train with me later, you won't have to worry about things like this. Bullet said, his tone sounding way too suggestive. No, I'll pass on that. Lubbock immediately broke into a cold sweat, looking like he wanted to escape at all costs. Akame's cooking is as amazing as ever. Yeah, no matter how many times you eat it, you never get tired of it. Leon and Sheil jumped in to change the topic, seemingly trying to diffuse the tension between Mine and Chelsea. After their little squabble, Chelsea finally stopped her antics. By the way, Akame, I want to confirm something. Blaine said, turning to her. Do you still feel the same way about Kurum as before? If Akame still had any intent to kill Kurum, he needed to seriously reconsider whether to bring up her request. No. Akame replied. She's no longer serving the honest regime, she's finally free. That's all I ever wanted. That's good. Blaine said. But she might still hold some resentment toward you. You should understand why. Akame quickly realized what he meant and gave a slight nod. I understand. Even now, Kurum likely still harbored hatred toward her. In Kurum's mind, betraying the Empire was unforgivable. While Blaine had managed to shift the Empire's ideology from within, sidestepping that issue entirely, it didn't change the fact that Kurum still saw Akame as a traitor. Well, that's not a big deal. Blaine said. Besides, your cooking is great. Kurum would definitely love to have it again. If the sisters could reconcile, it would be the best possible outcome. Kurum had never denied that, deep down, her sister was still the person she loved most. Thanks for the compliment. A rare, faint smile appeared on Akame's face. If there really was a chance, of course, she wanted to take it. Lunch ended. It was about time for Blaine to head back. I'll be going now, he said before leaving. Be careful on the way. Najunda said. Come visit more often when you have time, meow. Chelsea added, waving at him. Yeah. Blaine nodded before turning and walking away. As his figure disappeared into the forest, he shifted into Kamui's space. Inside, he unwrapped the lollipop Chelsea had given him. Not bad. It actually tastes pretty good. Chapter 86, Kurume's willfulness and affection back at the current base of the Akatsuki organization Hyuga gave. The prototype of a small base had already taken shape, and the progress was fairly quick. "Commander, where did you just go?" As soon as Blaine returned, Kurum immediately questioned him. "I went to discuss some things with Night Raid." Blaine answered truthfully. "Night Raid?" Kurum's expression darkened slightly, her tone carrying a hint of complaint. "Why didn't you tell me beforehand?" She was still hostile toward Night Raid, and the thought of Commander Blaine meeting those people alone made her uneasy. "Well, actually, their attitude was quite friendly. Also, I spoke with your sister about a few things," Blaine said, attempting to steer the conversation elsewhere. In reality, he had gone alone purely for convenience. If Kurum had known and insisted on going with him, he wouldn't have been able to use Kamui space for an instant transfer. Kamui space was a crucial secret tied to his eyes. Both his right eye's intangibility and his left eye's spatial distortion were deeply connected to it. For example, the principle of intangibility involved shifting parts of his body into Kamui space. His body wouldn't disappear to the naked eye, but this created the illusion of transparency. In truth, his physical form existed within Kamui space, which was why maintaining intangibility made him untouchable but also unable to attack. No matter who it was, Blaine had no intention of revealing the existence of Kamui space so easily. "My sister? What did she say?" Blaine had successfully redirected the topic, and Kurum immediately focused on her sister. "I told Akam about our current situation. She wants to meet you. I told her I'd ask for your opinion first. I can't wait to see my sister again so I can kill her." Kurum's normally cute face turned cold in an instant, revealing a dark, almost sinister expression. "But Akam has already said that she doesn't want to fight you anymore because you've changed." Blaine immediately countered. "But she hasn't changed. She's still siding with the rebels. She betrayed the Empire, she betrayed us." Kurum was still unable to let it go. Blaine felt a headache coming on. "How should I put it? At least for now, we aren't enemies with Night Raid. We can interact with them peacefully. Your sister is fighting for the well-being of the people, and so are we. In that sense, aren't you and your sister on the same side?" The question of overthrowing the Empire and territorial disputes could come later. If he could topple the honest regime, what reason would he have to fear the Revolutionary Army? Kurum's thoughts became muddled. She pressed her fingers against her forehead as a faint stabbing pain surfaced, an after effect of the repeated brainwashing she had undergone. Seeing this, Blaine instinctively reached out and gently massaged her temples, hoping to ease the discomfort. The pain was only temporary, and before long, Kurum felt better. But instead of moving away, she took the opportunity to bury her face against Blaine's chest. She rarely showed it, but when given the chance, she still wanted to be spoiled. "Does it still hurt?" Seeing that Kurum hadn't moved for a while, Blaine asked. "A little. Just a bit longer," Kurum replied playfully. In reality, she was already fine. "If I can convince my sister to return, I don't want to fight her. But if I can't..." Kurum suddenly spoke again. "I understand." Blaine didn't say much more. The relationship between Akam and Kurum wasn't something that could be resolved so easily. It was already this difficult trying to convince Kurum. Convincing Akam wouldn't be any easier. The two sisters couldn't convince each other, and that was precisely why they had ended up in this life-or-death situation. Their relationship might only have a chance to improve once Kurum's brainwashing weakened further. Otherwise, if they met now, there was no telling what might happen. "Also, next time you're going to do something dangerous, I want you to tell me first." Kurum's voice carried a rare hint of vulnerability. "If something happens to you, what am I supposed to do?" Hearing this, Blaine felt a pang of guilt. All right. Maybe next time, he wouldn't keep it from her. Even if bringing Kurum along meant riding a danger beast and taking an extra hour or two, it wouldn't be that much of a hassle. And if worst came to worst, he could always blindfold her, ensuring his Kamui space remained a secret. After a while, Kurum finally stepped back, pulling away from Blaine's embrace. While the workers were busy building the base, Blaine didn't stay idle. He frequently went out to hunt danger beasts, earning system points in the process. Before long, the Akatsuki organization's base had reached its initial stage of completion now, it just needed gradual expansion. At the same time, Blaine planned to investigate the Righteous Conscience faction. His knowledge of the Imperial officials was too limited, and he wasn't sure which ones belonged to that faction. The best way to gather information? Naturally, by asking Night Raid. The Revolutionary Army had access to a wealth of intelligence. This would also be a good opportunity to fulfill Akam's previous request, exchanging information for a chance to arrange a meeting between her and Kurum. That way, they'd both break even in terms of favors. "I need to go talk to Night Raid again." This time, Blaine made sure to inform Kurum in advance. But before he could even finish speaking, Kurum decisively said, "I'm going with you." "That's fine, but you have to promise me that when you see Akame, you won't attack her. If you agree, I'll take you with me." Blaine set his condition. I promise." Though reluctant, Kurum still agreed in order to go with him. "If you don't keep your word, I won't take you next time," Blaine warned. "I'll definitely keep my promise," Kurum vowed. With that settled, Blaine took Kurum with him, flying toward the mountain forest on a danger beast. Soon, they arrived at the same wooden cabin from last time. Although Night Raid's members didn't usually stay there, Nadunda had previously mentioned that pressing a specific mechanism inside the cabin would send them a signal. Blaine still remembered the mechanism she had told him about, a small brick hidden behind a mural that could be pressed. He tested it, and sure enough, it worked. Night Raid should have received the signal by now. "Alright, they should be here soon," Blaine said, glancing at Kurum. Kurum nodded calmly, but inside, her emotions were a tangled mess. She was about to see her sister again. Chapter 87, Lady Asdith might be in love. The front lines of the battlefield fortress city of the Northern Tribes. Originally, the Northern Tribes, led by their prince and warrior, Namaseka, had gathered their elite forces in this fortress city, using it as a stronghold to intensify their invasion of the Empire. For a time, the Northern Tribes were at the height of their power. Namaseka, a fierce and skilled warrior, had crushed the corrupt and poorly trained Imperial army in battle after battle, causing the Empire to lose vast amounts of territory. Brave and intelligent, he was revered by his people and regarded by the Empire as a formidable threat. In response, the Empire formed the Northern Crusade Army to counter the invasion led by Asdith herself. Under her command, Asdith and the three beasts utterly annihilated the Northern Tribes' army of 400,000 with overwhelming force. The so-called hero of the North was mercilessly slaughtered. He was never a match for the Empire's strongest general. No wonder she's General Asdith. The dignity of these barbaric foreigners has been completely trampled under her feet. Ha ha ha. The hero of the North? In front of the general, he's nothing more than a dead dog. Suppressing 400,000 troops in an instant, only the general could achieve such a feat. As Asdith completed her total victory over the Northern Tribes, the soldiers around her showered her with praise. Their words carried the tone of classic villains, but then again, neither the Imperial Army nor the Northern Tribes were particularly righteous. It was important to remember the Northern Tribes were the true aggressors. Asdith's army was merely fighting a defensive war. "General, there are still hundreds of thousands of people in the fortress city, including soldiers and civilians. Should we take them captive and bring them back?" A subordinate stepped forward to report the situation. "No. They're just a waste of food. Bury them all alive. The three beasts will handle it." Sitting atop a throne, Asdith casually crossed her long legs. Her right hand propped up her cheek as she gazed down with an air of absolute dominance. Her cold, indifferent words sent chills down the spines of even her own soldiers. This was in order to bury hundreds of thousands of people alive. Of course, their shock was fleeting. They had no sympathy for the enemy, nor would they ever dare to defy Asdith's command. First of all, the Empire simply couldn't afford to support hundreds of thousands of prisoners. The amount of food alone would be a massive drain on resources, not to mention the constant threat of rebellion. Besides, Asdith was merely carrying out orders from the imperial capital. She simply saw no need to explain herself to her subordinates. More importantly, she truly didn't care about the lives of the weak. This wasn't about vengeance for the destruction of her homeland by the Northern Tribes years ago. Asdith had always been ruthless toward her enemies. At her command, the three beasts set to work. Their subordinates began digging massive pits, preparing to bury the captured soldiers and civilians alive. The three beasts were second only to Asdith in rank, each one a fearsome warrior handpicked by her personally. During their selection process, Asdith had implemented brutal training regimens. Many had died in the process, leaving only these three as the sole survivors. Moreover, all three were Tegu users, making them incredibly powerful in their own right. "Lady Asdith, the burial work will take a few more days to complete." Liver, one of the three beasts, knelt on one knee before Asdith. He was a middle-aged man with grayish-white hair, formerly a general of the Empire and Bullets superior. After certain events, he had become one of Asdith's trusted subordinates. Beside him, the other two members of the three beasts, Nai and Daidara, were also kneeling. Nai, despite his petite stature, delicate features, and feminine attire, was actually a man. Daidara, in contrast, was a tall, muscular man wearing a strange eye patch and carrying a massive double-bladed axe on his back. His Tegu, the double-bladed axe Belvac. Well, let's hold off for now. Soon, the imperial capital should send new orders whether to press forward and eradicate the remaining northern tribes or to focus on something else. Lady Asdith said indifferently. The fate of the northern tribes still lingering in the fortress city was already sealed. Among them were not only soldiers but also a large number of civilians. However, it was important to note that this fortress city had been established after the northern tribes invaded and occupied imperial territory. This was a war fought within the empire's own lands. The civilians about to be buried alive had entered along with the invading northern army, settling in the conquered land. This was part of a strategy devised by Numasika, the hero of the northern region, an approach that combined military invasion with large-scale migration to ensure a more effective takeover. In the end, both the warriors and the civilians who followed him into imperial lands would become casualties of war. This entire plan had been designed with the sole purpose of invasion. One fact remained unchanged: Lady Asdith was undeniably ruthless. However, rather than portraying her as indiscriminately slaughtering innocents under orders from the imperial capital, it was more accurate to say that Numasika himself had doomed the people who placed their faith in him. It feels like Lady Asdith has been preoccupied lately. Has something been troubling you? Liver asked cautiously. He had noticed Asdith behaving unusually often, lost in thought, distracted by something. Normally, she would never act this way. There is indeed something on my mind. Lately, I've been thinking about that man more and more, Asdith admitted as Liver brought up the topic. Almost immediately, the image of Blaine surfaced in her thoughts once again. Who was this person? To have captured Lady Asdith's attention like this? Naiaw asked, clearly surprised. He's Blaine, the one I mentioned to you before. Asdith answered without hesitation. I'm not sure if I should say this, Liver said, hesitating. He seemed to have realized something but was unsure whether to voice it, fearing it might offend Lady Asdith. Just say it. I won't take offense, Asdith said firmly. Understood. Liver nodded before stating, I believe it's very likely that Lady Asdith is in love. Eh? Naiaw and Daidara both turned to Liver in shock. Neither of them, one being a battle maniac and the other obsessed with his own twisted hobbies, knew much about love. However, the idea of Lady Asdith being associated with that word felt completely unimaginable to them. Chapter 88, The urge to fall in love. Asdith, with her overwhelmingly dominant personality, is hardly someone you'd associate with love. Naiaw and Daidara both figured that, at most, Asdith might take in some male playthings to torment at her leisure. But since they'd never actually seen her do so, it was obvious she had no interest in that at all. They simply couldn't imagine Asdith falling in love like some ordinary woman. Or rather, the very thought of Asdith being in love was inconceivable. I'm just speculating. If I'm mistaken, I ask for your forgiveness, Lady Asdith. Liver said cautiously. Love. Asdith fell silent for a moment before speaking again. I've heard of it before. It's the feeling of mutual affection between a man and a woman, correct? Yes. Lady Asdith, you may be in love with Lord Blaine. The fact that you keep thinking about him is a common phenomenon among those experiencing love. Liver explained. I see. That does make sense. I don't feel this way about any other man, only him. Asdith mused, deep in thought. It seemed Liver's words had struck a chord with her. The icy, fearless beauty of her face was suddenly tinged with an unfamiliar hint of red, not a sign of embarrassment, but rather, the unmistakable glow of someone in love. Naiaw and Daidara were so stunned that their jaws nearly hit the ground. This was an expression they never imagined Asdith could make. Liver, equally shocked, widened his eyes. Now, he was even more convinced Lady Asdith was definitely in love. Though the three beasts had never met Lord Blaine, anyone capable of earning Asdith's favor, let alone being seen as a romantic interest, had to be an extraordinary man. She would occasionally mention Lord Blaine to them, such as how he was soon to become her deputy general. They were already aware of that. Now fully realizing the cause of her earlier inexplicable discomfort, Asdith understood it was love. I never would have thought. I've only ever known battle, yet now, suddenly, I have the desire to fall in love. She murmured to herself in amazement. Perhaps it's because, until now, Lady Asdith had never encountered such an exceptional man. Liver suggested. Asdith considered it. Indeed. He is outstanding, and in every way, he happens to suit my tastes. It is a joyous occasion that Lady Asdith has found her true love. Liver remarked. What about you? Asdith asked idly. None of you seem to be in love either. I'm already an old man. At my age, it's not really appropriate. Liver replied calmly. In truth, he was only 40, but to him, that was already old. He had long since lost interest in such matters. As for me, I prefer dissecting small animals and collecting women's faces over romance. Naiaw said with an innocent, childlike smile while uttering something utterly disturbing. That was simply his twisted hobby. Your tastes are as unique as ever. Liver sighed. Same here. Daidara added, his grin far more sinister than Naiaw's. I just want to rack up more experience points. Right. Asdith muttered, saying no more. She was already itching to return to Blaine. However, for now, the battlefield took priority. As they slaughtered the northern tribes in the fortress city, they also had to remain vigilant against further incursions from those beyond the Empire's borders. In the original story, it was around this time that Asdith had a similar epiphany. After returning from the northern front to the imperial capital, she directly told the young emperor and prime minister Honest that she wanted to fall in love. Meanwhile, the members of Nitrate had already heard of Blaine's arrival. Blaine's here. He must have something important to discuss with us. Najunda said. Just like last time, let's go together. Before long, the entire Nitrate team gathered once again at the wooden cabin, their temporary base. However, this time, there was someone unexpected among them. Kurum. Akame's face showed a flicker of shock as she saw the figure standing beside Blaine, the very person who had occupied her thoughts day and night. Sister. Kurum wore a faint smile, appearing calm and without hostility. However, had she not promised Blaine beforehand that she wouldn't act recklessly, she might have already drawn her sword. I didn't expect you to bring Kurum here yourself. I thought you'd have Akame meet her on your side instead. Najunda remarked in surprise. I also have something to ask you all, so I brought Kurum along. Blaine explained. What is it? Najunda asked. I want to know who in the Empire belongs to the Conscience faction. Blaine didn't mince words, getting straight to the point. We have a detailed list on our side. Might as well just give it to you. Najunda said. I can't guarantee it includes every official from the Conscience faction, but it covers the key figures. Alright, I appreciate it. Blaine nodded, and Najunda headed back to the base to retrieve the list. Just then, Akame turned to Blaine. Blaine, can I have some time alone with Kurum? Of course, but don't do anything reckless. Blaine agreed. We won't. Akame stepped toward Kurum. Kurum, let's go. Kurum gave a small nod and followed her sister. After a short walk, the two arrived at a secluded spot. They sat together on a large rock. It had been a long time since they last sat like this, just the two of them. Kurum, I heard from Blaine that you've left the Empire's assassination unit. I tried convincing you for so long, but you wouldn't listen to me. Akame said, breaking the silence. Because you joined the rebels. I didn't want to betray everyone like you did. Kurum replied softly, though her words carried a sharp edge. I really admire how serious you are about pursuing your ideals, but in the end, I still have to kill you. I want you to stay by my side forever. Akame remained unfazed, as if she had anticipated this response. After all, Blaine had already warned her. As expected, you're still the same, Kurum. But this time, you didn't draw your sword right away. Is that because of Blaine? Chapter 89, Temporary Reconciliation. Well, Commander forbade me from making a move. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let me come along. Kurum nodded slightly. I see. Akame said, that's not a bad thing. At least we still have the chance to talk properly. I brought some snacks. Do you want some, sister? Kurum took out a small bag of snacks from her pocket. Of course, there were no drugs in them, otherwise, she wouldn't have offered them to her sister. Turning her into one of Yotsufu's puppets was entirely different from harming her with drugs. At the very least, Kurum didn't want to hurt her sister in that way. Akame took the snacks from Kurum without hesitation, showing complete trust in her. It hasn't been that long since we were separated, but it feels like forever. Kurum suddenly said with a sigh. Just 2 months ago, we were together every single day, no matter what. Yeah, back then, you even wanted to follow me into the bath. Akame and Kurum sat on the same rock, but there was at least a meter of distance between them. You were the same. Every night, you insisted on sleeping next to me. Kurum smiled. Even though our training was harsh and exhausting, I was happy just being with you every day. Yeah. But we can still be together from now on. Akame spoke in a calm tone. Kurum still wanted to kill her, but Akame had long since changed her mind. Ever since she learned that Kurum had left the Empire's assassination unit and was now working with Blaine to change the Empire from within, she no longer felt the need to personally put an end to her suffering. You're still saying things like that? If it weren't for the commander forbidding me, I would have killed you already. Then we really could be together forever. Kurum's expression darkened, and she gripped her sword hilt tightly, restraining herself with great effort. If they fought now, it was hard to say who would win. In the original story, Kurum's fate was always to be defeated whether by Akame's blade or at her hands. But before that final battle, Kurum had already been severely weakened. Chelsea's assassination attempt had left lasting damage, and even her drugs had lost their effect. Her Yotsufu's puppets were far weaker than before. Knowing her time was running out, she had still dragged her broken body into a last fight against her sister. At this moment, She might still lose, but Akam wouldn't have it as easy as in the original story. Fortunately, Blaine wouldn't allow Kurum to throw her life away. Kurum, you really have changed. In the past, no one could have stopped you. Akam said, sighing. She knew that Blaine was the one who had changed Kurum. If Blaine hadn't already denied having a romantic relationship with Kurum, Akam might have directly asked how far things had progressed between them. Yeah. The commander is like a savior to all of us. If not for him, who knows how many of our comrades would have been disciplined by now. Kurum nodded. I know expecting you to recognize the Revolutionary Army is unrealistic right now, but we're fighting for the same thing. The ones corrupting the Empire, aren't they our common enemy? Akam hoped to slowly mend her relationship with Kurum. Kurum remained silent for a moment, as if her sister's words had stirred something in her. But only slightly. I understand. She finally said, her voice cold. Once we've eliminated those vermin, I'll kill you. All right. Akam smiled slightly, as if relieved. If that day comes, I'd rather die by your hands. She had long since accepted the possibility of death. If she had feared it, she never would have left the Empire's assassination unit to join the Revolutionary Army. Once Minister Honest and his ilk were gone, her mission would be complete. Without regrets, she would willingly let Kurum take her life. She knew her hands were stained with blood both from her time in the assassination unit and night raid. Perhaps dying at Kurum's hands would be a fitting redemption. Kurum's eyes widened slightly, surprised by her sister's words. So until then, we need your help. Akam continued. I'm not asking you to join the Revolutionary Army, just to work with Night Raid for now. Minister Honest is the ultimate target. Once he's dealt with, you can kill me. I won't resist. It's a deal. Kurum nodded, accepting Akam's terms. I don't want you dying at someone else's hands, so until then, I'll protect you.